Perfectly timed. Well, welcome back, everyone. Like usual, or not usual, but like it's been usual for the past few weeks, I am starved for time, and so we're going to listen to this spit up. And by that I mean I'm not going to read and translate. We'll just listen to the translation direct, talk about what we're listening to. Also, sorry, just catching my breath. But I got some Sudra, so and green to go with Friday. Green for Venus. But yeah, how have you been, Graham? Hello?
Yeah, I'm here.
Oh, all right, cool. Just making sure. So it was interesting. Before we actually started, are you able to see what the Sudra looks like now?
Let me take a look. One second.
I didn't know if that was you watching it or not. Okay,
no.
But yeah, I don't know. I like this one. It feels like nice and earthy. It's like not too much. And then I don't know if you guys can see. Yeah, I don't know. I like this one. It feels like nice. It's weird hearing myself, but yeah. So it has this nice design here. And then also, I don't know if you can see it. I'm gonna have to flip it around here. Is it okay? Here it is.
Okay.
This is Chai and Shalom. So life and peace. I like that. Nice. And then on a Chamsa. But yeah. So let's see. Where is the? Oh shoot! Wait, is this not the right? Okay. It was just I need to clean up my tabs because I have way too much open. Let's see. Here. Yeah, let's I guess I could just copy that. All right, perfect. So to start off, this past week's Parsha was Parsha Shemini, which is obviously, well, not obviously, but it means like the eighth. Sorry. Let's see. Here I'm gonna let's see. Oh wow, I really have not been paying attention to all my tabs. Okay. Yeah, here. Okay, I found where to do it. So here. So to start off, it's something that a lot of people have been talking about. So that a lot of people have been talking about lately. I mean, obviously the poll of one person, but Graham, have you heard people talking about the red heifer lately?
Just, it's just on the news, not really a whole lot of people in real life. Again, I still like the idea of a red heifer barbecue chain.
Oh, like Red Robin, but red heifer.
Yeah.
And then their mascot could be Heather the heifer.
Oh, that's really bad, but I like it.
And it's like Wendy's. You have the like this cow, and she has red pigtails or cow tails in this case. Anyway,
Funny.
yeah. So the reason I brought it up is actually because there is a bit of a mention, but what I noticed when looking it over is that the mention in this chapter is not actually a mention to. It's not a mention of a red heifer. It's simply a mention of an egel, of a calf. But it's called a ben bakar, the son of a cow. Whereas it's not son of a heifer, which interesting because apparently heifer is has similar implications as the term virgin does, not necessarily
Yeah.
more within the context of agriculture, but then also that with that there's also the level of animal husbandry, which is also considered agriculture. So but what's interesting about that is this idea that it kind of parallels with the idea of the alma, which how at least Christian tradition renders it is more of a betula, like not so much a maiden, but more of a virgin. But I don't know. I
Yeah, no,
just feel.
definitely. My grandfather was a dairy farmer, and yeah, and a cow that hadn't given birth was called a heifer.
Oh,
Yep.
I thought you were going to say that my grandfather was a heifer, which would raise maybe about two questions, if not more. Which is, how is your cow? How is your grandfather a cow? And also, wait, your grandfather was a heifer, as in like a female cow. But obviously, that's not what you were saying. That was just I don't know. It's late. Well, it's actually not that late. It's early for me. So anyway, so I just figured because a lot of people have asked me about this. Oh, Ariel, what's this about the red heifer? Yeah, there are some. I mean, I'm going to call them nut jobs. Like the thing is that even within the relatively religious circles of Judaism, you don't have people who actually think that should be brought back until the temple's built. And the thing is that with that, it's ultimately an issue. Oh, well, when's the temple going to be built? But the thing is that it's almost like if they rebuild the temple without focusing on why it was destroyed. There's literally this concept that the temple is destroyed over baseless hatred, sinat chinam. Literally hatred that has no base, that has no foundation. It's like this idea. It's like, okay, it's one thing if you hate someone because they killed your family. It's another thing if you hate someone just because maybe you don't like their opinion on something, and because of that you start treating them like utter crap. That's the idea of baseless hatred. It goes much deeper than that, but there's this idea that basically, it's like if you rebuild the temple without getting rid of the baseless hatred, the temple is just going to be destroyed again. And if you view that from I think that's a perfectly valid way to view this is the situation geopolitically. Imagine obviously this isn't mainstream within any circles. Except for maybe the most insane. I'm not even saying religious because they're not the most religious. They're just the most delusional. They want to bring back the temple at any cost, even if that means destroying all Jews. They don't think that could happen, but the point is that nobody seriously nobody seriously wants to build a third temple in place of the Al-Aqsa Mosque or the Haram al-Sharif. Because this is the thing that a lot of people don't know. The Dome of the Rock isn't the Al-Aqsa Mosque. They're two separate buildings.
The Dome of the Rock isn't actually a mosque even.
Yeah. In fact, there is a good argument that the builders of the Dome of the Rock, that it was basically built in order to preserve the Temple Mount from becoming a trash dump, which it had been under the Byzantines. And so it's real, like, there's a serious argument to be made that if both Jews and Muslims go far back enough, there's really no conflict. It's people's attachment to a landmark rather than what it actually is supposed to be. Because I definitely don't know the whole thing, but in terms of Islamic theology, like I wonder if they even have a concept of like what role they think the temple played, like during the reign of King Solomon. I mean, surely they venerate Suleiman, so it should play some role. And I mean, the thing is that the reason they find the site significant, obviously there's the tradition of Muhammad going there on the night ride, but that doesn't change the fact that it was already culturally significant because of the fact of what it was. And so I think that, in the same way that after the Holocaust, people were able to start viewing Christianity in a more Jewish context because previously they'd done everything they could to distance it. I think in that same way, it might actually be possible. I just don't know how. It's not probable, but it might be possible to show people a reality where Islam wasn't simply given. There was a lot of conquest, but like I have like I mean, I even learned this from religious Jews. I'm pretty sure I can't remember for the life of me where I learned this, but basically that Muhammad made sure that, or I don't know, it might have not been Muhammad by this time. Again, it's really rusty, but essentially that whoever was responsible for the construction of the Dome of the Rock, that that it was supposed to be a place marker so that people wouldn't forget where the temple was. And then the Al-Aqsa Mosque was had to. I'm pretty sure the Al-Aqsa. Shoot, I really would like to learn more about this sometime because it's been too long. But my point being is that I don't think there's any eschatology because the thing that makes here's it what makes the Temple Mount significant for Muslims, it's not inherently the Dome of the Rock. The Dome of the Rock is in memorial or in memoriam of the event of the Midnight Ride, but ultimately, no, it's the foundation stone. It's the bedrock outcropping. And so, if you look at it that way, it's again, it's one of those things where it's not about the theology; it's actually about the human level of it because people become materialistic. They become attached. I mean, I don't think that there's anyone who, except for someone who's extremely enlightened to the point that they're basically almost to some other people they would seem delusional. But this idea of if a place is so holy, what makes it holy? Is it the building that's there, or is it what happened there? And in any case, it's not just what happened there, but actually the object of significance isn't even anything that's built, which I think is kind of an interesting, fun fact. But definitely, I think that anyone advocating the destruction of any historical site is off their rocker. And at the end of the day, if someone really believes in their religion that much that they would be willing to do something like that, they should just have faith that what they think should happen will happen. And if it, I mean, at the end of the day, if it doesn't make sense that you believe something so truly and then you feel like you're the one that needs to bring it about. It's almost like you don't have faith then. You want to have a narrative. It's not about belief, it's about narrative.
Yeah, I was going to say a couple of thoughts here. One of them, these people are basically, they're walking that same path as Sabbatai Zevi. It's okay to do bad stuff to bring about the Messiah. As far as the Dome of the Rock, I always had the take that the biggest significance on it, again, the night ride was important, but I always thought it was even more important that that was the place of the sacrifice of Isaac. And that, and that tradition was what made it so significant. And the last one is I saw an interesting video where the idea is that the Dome of the Rock and the Alaska mosques were actually built on top of the Roman temple that was there. It was like a two-part temple, and both of them were built over top of that. And the idea, the theory is that the Herod's temple was actually in between the two. And you could actually, that they were speculating, you could have all three of them up there at the same time, which I thought was an interesting idea. Tag.
Does that also account for Fort Antonia?
I don't know. Wasn't that to one side of it? That wasn't between the two, was it?
Oh, you might be right. Anyway, so this one guy said Mitra was born of a rock. Maybe Mitra is the Messiah. Wait, what's the connection to the rock? I mean, I feel like I might be missing something. Like, yeah, I'm mentioning the bedrock, but there isn't any tradition of the Messiah being born out of it. Or, I mean, it's definitely an interesting connection. I think that's probably more connected to like Mountain Mother mythology, like the idea of being born from stone. But anyway, so without further ado, let's actually get into this video. Otherwise, I'll just be monologuing the whole time, which, to be fair, doesn't make for bad content. It's just, actually, I don't know. I really don't know. So you know what? Let's just get into it.
To slaughter Jewish people want to slaughter red cows on the Temple Mount. Hi, my name is Chaya Sarah, and I'm a Haredi Jew. Ask me any question that you'd like. The second.
Okay, so her name's a pun. And I mean, like, that, it's legitimately, like, it's a real name, like Chaya Sarah. But so there's a chapter in Genesis called Chaye Sarah, and so I think it's probably a pun on that. Like, you're not going to name your kid after a chapter because it's like, oh, I named my kid, I don't know chapters, but say like Little Red Riding Hood into the Forest. I don't know. Let's just say there's a chapter like that. The point is that both Chaya and Sarah are names. Now, they happen to sound, saying them together sounds like Chaye Sarah, but Chaye Sarah means the lives of Sarah. It's actually referring to her death, but the lives of Sarah. Whereas Chaya Sarah is life Sarah, or like Chaya Sarah. I mean, if you wanted to just directly translate, it'd be either like living princess or princess of the living, or I mean, at the end of the day, they're two names. But all right, let's see. Mitra slays a cow, but it's a white cow, so maybe bad connections. Not necessarily. I mean, because the thing is that I think that the mistake would be to rule it out because it's white. Because at the end of the day, what we're going to read in a little bit doesn't actually specify any color of the cow. It just says that it has to be timimah. It has to be pure. It has to be whole, or like like unblemished is how it gets translated traditionally. But the thing is, the idea of unblemished when referring to the red cow means that it's like it doesn't have any blemishes, but more than anything, that it has only red hairs. Now with this, you don't have the issue. It just has to be an egel that's timimah, that's essentially fit for. Actually, I don't know if timimah would be fit for sacrifice or if it would imply something beyond fit, almost like perfect for sacrifice. I have a feeling it would be that one, but we'll get into it in a moment.
In Jewish media is a buzz right now over the fact that a Texas farmer who is a Christian sold or donated, couldn't find out which one it was, some red cows to an organization in Israel called Uvnei Yerushalayim. Allegedly, this organization is in favor of Jews rebuilding the third and final temple on the Temple Mount. Although I could not verify that information because I couldn't find their website, and therefore I couldn't find their mission statement. So what do red cows have to do with the rebuilding of the third and final temple? We look to Numbers 19:2 for the commandment of bringing a red heifer or a red female cow as a sacrifice, and then taking its ashes and sprinkling them for the purpose of purifying the high priest so he could perform his duties in the temple. Now, this commandment is deemed to be so illogical and bizarre that even Shlomo HaMelech, meaning King Solomon, and he was described as the wisest of all men, would scratch his head when it came to this commandment. Therefore, we describe this commandment as a chok, meaning a commandment that has no logical reasoning that is apparent to us why we do it, but we simply do it because God commanded us to. Now that we have addressed that, let us address the third temple. So far in Jewish history, we have had two temples. One temple that was destroyed by the Babylonians, and then one temple that was destroyed by the Romans. Most notably, the prophet Ezekiel, along with other prophets, foresaw that there would be a third and final temple that would last forever and be accessible to Jewish and non-Jewish people for the worshiping of the one true God. Due to the current political climate in the Middle East, a lot of people are preparing for the Messiah to finally come, due to the fact that we have seen so many biblical prophecies fulfilled, such as solar eclipses happening, the king of Persia or modern day Iran instigating a war against the Jewish people who are
You're muted.
Sorry. I feel like I'm having some sort of brain glitch. I mean, am I wrong that solar eclipses are a normal part of nature?
Well, I think that depends on who you talk to about it.
I mean, no one's saying that they're not, magical, but to say that they're supernatural, like, I mean, you could believe there's something supernatural about them, but that doesn't mean that they themselves are inherently supernatural. It's kind of like, there's something supernatural about but see, that's the thing. So much of what we consider
she left off the volcanoes and earthquakes too.
Also, don't forget diseases, wars.
Yep.
Oh wait, no, she mentioned war.
Yeah, she had the war part down.
Securely living in the land of Israel. Crazy inflation, expensive everything, wars all over, and more. However, there is a grave misunderstanding about how the temple is supposed to come to be. So the majority opinion in the Orthodox Jewish world is that the temple is not supposed to be physically built. Especially in the Haredi Jewish world, we believe that the third and final temple actually exists already. It is located in Shamayim, or heaven, and it will simply descend from the sky when the Messiah arrives, if God so wills it to do so. There is, however, a minority opinion that holds that the temple actually has to be built by us. But this opinion is so controversial, especially in the Orthodox Jewish world, due to the fact that it is pretty unanimous that we Jews cannot enter the Temple Mount for any reason whatsoever due to the levels of impurity that the world is currently in. Therefore, it is seen as a contamination of the holiest site in Judaism for us to enter there and to proceed to build on that land. So the fear that I have seen online that all Jews are planning the destruction of Al-Aqsa is totally unwarranted, and it's just fear-mongering. And I will tell you this because the Israeli rabbinate has complete control over all religious affairs, and the chief rabbi of Israel most recently strongly denounced Itamar Ben-Gvir for entering the Temple Mount for the purpose of praying there because it was seen as a contamination against the holiest site in Judaism. Okay, so this group, Uvnei Yerushalayim, which allegedly wants to physically rebuild the third and final temple, has imported some cows. They are doing whatever they want, and quite frankly, they have no power in the Israeli government because the Haredi Jews are in control of all religious affairs in the Israeli government. And the stance of Haredi Jews is that we are against physically building the third and final temple. I wouldn't be concerned about this because they have no real authority to do what they want to do, if that is indeed what they would like to do. At the end of the day, it's some people who believe that the Messiah is going to come, which Bezrat Hashem, he is going to come soon in our days. This is a group of people who simply want to be prepared because they feel that the arrival of the Messiah of all humanity is imminent at this point, which they are not incorrect for feeling that way. I also feel that way, but it doesn't make me want to go and build a third and final temple because I believe that God is the one who will give us the temple. I hope you found this to be interesting, and I hope you have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Interesting. You have any thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, let me see if I get her position right. So what she's saying is that Yahweh's going to basically throw the third temple down on top of the 𝐤𝐿 in the Dome of the Rock and smash them to bits. Kind of sounded that's like what she's saying.
I think it'll be more like a transfiguration.
Okay. I was thinking like a video game where you have the thing fall from the sky. I was going to say that could be a cool special effect.
Oh, it definitely would be a cool special effects, but the only problem is that, what happens if God does it and then the Muslims are still unhappy? And then the Jews are like, wait a second, you didn't destroy the mosque before you put it there? It's like, how come there's a mosque inside of the temple?
And the answer is, don't take it up with me, take it up with Allah. We didn't do it.
Yeah, it's honestly like it'll be like the mega church with the Starbucks or with a coffee shop inside, except it'll be the temple with a mosque inside, and then you have a church on the other side. But no, it is kind of funny. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, I was going to sit there and say is, what about the temple? That they had a temple in Bethel, that they've had more temples over the years.
Yeah, but Bethel was Israel, and we's talking about Judah.
I still think if you really want to have a temple, just go there. You can have a third temple. Less people upset. Tag.
No, that's how you piss off the Samaritans.
Why? They get to have a temple finally. Again.
Well, because it's their temple.
Well, yeah, but they're going to be the ones with the big temple this time, rather than having to be, secondary to Jerusalem. Yeah, I always try to put a positive spin on it.
One second. Ooh, this is cool. I'm going for a new aesthetic. Ooh, I like this. I really like this. Thoughts?
Let me see here. Nice.
Oh, I very much like this. I am the green man. Mwahaha. I am Al-Khidr. I am Hayarok. Ishayarok. Give me all your wine and your ganja. I am the green man. I gotta let loose every now and then. Anyway, let's oof. No, this might actually be a bit too tight. Gotta still figure this out. Anyway, all right. So let's see. What's this? All right, let's see what else we can find. Red heifer. But yeah, it's kind of interesting because you could almost look at the heifers, especially because what's interesting, and actually, you know what? Yeah, let's hear. I'm going to give a shout out to my good friend Colette, and also because he actually kind of gave me this idea. So here we'll watch a bit about that. Let's see if I can find it. It was interesting. I didn't know he's. Oh, that was 8 years ago. Anyway. Let's see. Would have been recent. Here.
After the mourning. So I'm not just or you know what so clearly with
Here.
apart from the general funeral, right? To cut yourself to cover for the grief. But that it's made symbolic for plowing. That's a very interesting thing. Because they're offering the blood, obviously, but they're also plowing their bodies as if to predict the resurrection of Boaz, to predict the new life that is to come in the autumn with the return of the rains.
Oh yeah, no, believe me, I know. Wait, you're saying isn't a thing, or is a thing? Yeah. Oh, the fact that you said is look him up. I'm guessing you mean is a thing. Yeah, I know. That's why I mentioned al-Khidr. That's the Arabic form of him. I mean, you actually, yeah. So you do have a form of him that exists. Well, within all monotheistic traditions, it's just some don't focus on it as much. But Yitro, Jethro, or Shuaib, or what's he also known as Chobab. He's also known as Reuel, I think. Yeah. Oof. I have got to get this not so tight. It looks good, but hurts my head a little bit. Maybe I just need to rewrap it. Okay, anyway, we'll keep watching this, and I will give my commentary on his commentary.
All right. And he lifts his voice and shouts, Baal is dead! Woe to the people of Dagon's son. Woe to the multitudes of Athar Baal. I will go down into the earth. And these are just over the top, but this is about the importance. It's about you show someone's importance by how important people humble themselves. Grief is about being humbled. And if you ever experience death, and I have experienced a lot of death actually in the family in the past few years, especially some tragic deaths. And
One of the very, very few benefits of having a small family is that not as many deaths. Again, there's the other downside to not that many lives either. But you know what? You win some, you lose some. And that's one of the reasons why I want to have a big family. But then again, shit's getting crazy, so who knows? I mean, for all we know, the whole world might go up in smoke in a few days. Or was it Chas v'Chalila? It won't. But, you know, the way that some people are acting, I mean, that's the idea of sinat chinam. I mean, at the end of the day, if nobody had this baseless hatred, you know, someone wrongs another person, but they'd be able to get over it. It's the fact that we're unable to let go of these little things that are in our hearts. And it's like those little things end up, you know, boiling and growing into much bigger ones that can't simply be solved by, you know, just deciding not to respond to someone antagonizing. And obviously it's not so simple, but and also like another thing that I think a lot of people talk about it, but how many people actually really consciously are aware of the fact that, like, and again, it doesn't justify it, but that trauma is responsible for the way that a lot of people act. And it's one of those things where it's like that alone should be reason enough that people are trying to break the cycle, whether they were in that cycle or not. But more than anything, it just, anyway, let's move on. Sorry, I don't even know what I'm saying.
I was going to say my little take on that one is I think the people shouldn't be antagonizing in the first place, because if you're responding to somebody who's, you know, just wantonly without any reason antagonizing you, your response on that one, it's not with reason. Them, you know, just deciding to vex you, to heckle you, is the reason why you're responding. At least that's my take.
it makes you feel small, but it also makes them more important. It makes you remember the beauty in their life. And I think exaggerating, they would exaggerate. This was a very common thing with their feelings. And this was an important sign. It was for the gods as well. It's for their afterlife. So people are communing with the gods with these exaggerated things, and the gods themselves set this example through the death of Baal. And that Baal is associated so clearly with the agricultural cycle does kind of indicate something. And I have a lot of like monotheist friends that say, well, Baal is great. He was a great person, but he's just a person. Don't make an idol of him. Don't worship him like this. He's obviously a god. A god does this. A god is symbolic for the natural world. A person cannot be in the same way. A person does not resurrect in the same way as a god.
See, that I
God, like a
don't
person,
understand.
is
Why would someone try to argue that Baal was a human? Like, I mean, obviously, there's like maybe someone who's like, oh, these gods are all just euhemerization, or they're just deifications of humans. But at the end of the day, I mean, like, Baal is pretty clearly a cognate with with Yod-Heh-Vav-Heh. Like, I mean, especially in Senkuniathon's history, he doesn't mention Yahweh. He mentions Yeo, but he mentions that there being this like kinship, this brotherhood, almost implied to be a religious one between Hirombalus. And there's the thing, his name is Hirombalus, the priest, or the priest of Yeo. It's literally saying his name is Hirambalus, Hirambal. His name is Hirambal, which means Cherem. It means made sacred but set apart, as opposed to just made holy. So Hirambal, it means Baal is set apart, or is like is holy and set apart, or is like forbidden. Baal is forbidden. But this is the thing. It's not like forbidden as like forbidden to worship in that context. The Hiram means that like it's so holy, it's almost like it's taboo. And what's interesting is, what's one of the biggest taboos in Judaism? You don't say his name. I don't know. I think that's interesting. That in his name is Baal, not Yehu, but yet he is a priest of Yehu. And any thoughts?
No, interesting. Yeah, as far as I don't know how anybody would think that the god Baal was human. Again, you have things like the Hyros Gamos, some of the festivals, you'd have a human standing in as Baal for some of the reenactments, but that'd be as close as you could get tagged.
Maybe that's what they're referring to. Are you still able to hear me, or am I more muffled?
No, I can hear you.
Oh, cool. Well, honestly, this might be something I do if I'm ever wearing a mask somewhere, but then someone's coughing, and I'm like, well, I want extra protection. I don't know. It looks good.
Is fated to die, but the god returns, like Persephone and Demeter, whatnot. And Ishtar, she goes down into the underworld, and when she's there, fertility is gone. Chalas, nothing grows, no one fucks anymore. And if there's no, what, where, why with the cow and the bear, there's no more babies, and everything is just.
Oh, I must have not gone far back enough, but yeah, there's actually a similar. Yeah, here it is. There's a similar narrative in Judaism where there's the idea that the rabbis, they asked God to take away like the desire to do evil, and so God did that. But then, take away the evil, or the the animal part of the soul, or take away the evil inclination. And there's this idea that happened, and then people stopped procreating, and so everything, like, not everything started to die, but actually, but no, I think there is this implication that like everything, because it's not just human procreation, it's like I'm not sure, I might be imposing that on the story, but at the very least it was took away the human desire for procreation. So the rabbis are like, oh no, this is a huge mistake, bring it back. And so there's this idea that what God took away was the inclination for idolatry, which is kind of interesting. I mean, it's not really true. I mean, like, at the end of the day, if what you're saying is don't worship an object as if it is God, that's a different thing than don't worship, or like basically don't worship an object because you believe it's God versus don't use an object in worship to God. Because I don't think that I think it would be a rare occurrence for people to argue that totems or idols or fetishes are actually supposed to, like obviously they're supposed to be the deity that they're in the image of, but it's not that thing is literally it. It would be like if you call someone on the phone, you're talking to them, but you're not like, you see what I mean? Like, you're talking to them, but at the same time, you're not talking to them face to face.
True, but you could sit there and argue pretty effectively that their spirit was within the phone. And that's how you were communicating with them.
But yeah, so I mean, but no, I think it's interesting because at the end of the day, it could. I mean, what does it mean that these people still have idols, and that's what I really have a big issue with, saying that people no longer idolize. No, people have idols, and I don't just mean in this like, oh, like, we idolize this and that. I'm literally talking about people still have idols, and they just don't recognize it as it because they're like, oh, this isn't an idol because I don't think this is God. But at the end of the day, I mean,
the issue is whether you worship it or not whether you think it's God or not.
well, but see, even that, I mean, like, what is worship? Here, I mean, let's look this up. What is worship?
My take on it is something that you sacrifice for. It's a process by which you're sacrificing in order to achieve something.
Let's see. Worship etymology. Acknowledge worthiness, acknowledge of worth, worthship. Wow, so it literally just means something that is worthy of, or something that is worthy, acknowledgement of worth. It's worthiness. So,
well, I was going to say I think it has a little more of an active sense than that, but
well, no, something which is like something which has worth. It's like the active acknowledging worth. It's not just this passive knowing. It's this idea of like, but I guess my point is like, I don't know. I just think that with that definition, that all three major monotheistic religions idolize their holy books.
well, I think more of it that people idolize money and status these days more than anything else is my take on it.
True, but I mean in this very literal, like, viewing something with, because at the end of the day, people like, yeah, people might get this feeling that when they get money, but at the end of the day, they realize that the money is just something that they can use to get something else, right?
No, I don't think that. That's what money actually is, but I don't think that that's what people think. I think that they see them having a higher total on the money score means that they're a better person than they're doing better in life.
Interesting. Baal was the son of El, so was Jesus. Maybe that's why, but Jesus was technically Elohim as well. So the thing that's tricky is that Baal wasn't actually the son of El. He was the son of Shamumu or Shemaim, who impregnated. Dang it! Actually, you know what? Here, what was it? Trying to think where it was. Here is it. Yeah, I'm gonna pull it up here. Copy. Is this the right translation? Let's see. Yeah. Oh, wait, this is the right one. So, here, I'm going to pull this up here. Control V. Here. So check this out. So, Damaris. Okay. So when Kronos, El, reached manhood, he punished his father Uranos and thus avenged his mother, utilizing Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great, perhaps equated with Taltus, 1018, for he was his secretary. As counselor and helper, the children of Kronos were Persephone and Athena. Perhaps the goddess Anat is in mind. The former died in early maidenhood. With the advice of the latter, Athena, as well as of Hermes, Kronos made a sickle and a spear of iron. Then Hermes used magic spells on the allies of Kronos and instilled in them a desire to fight against Kronos on behalf of Ge. And so they fight against Shamayim on behalf of Aretz. Thus Kronos waged war. Holy crap. Well, I'll finish this, but thus El waged war against Shamayim, expelled him from his dominion, and took up his kingdom. Shamayim's favorite mistress, who was pregnant, was also captured in the battle, and El gave her in marriage to Dagon. While with the latter, she gave birth to the child conceived by Shamayim, whom she called Demarus, or Baal Hadad. So this is basically saying that Dagon is Baal Hadad's stepdad.
Interesting.
So it's actually really interesting because with this idea, this is potentially where people could get this idea that maybe El wasn't maybe the father of and actually I wonder who was that mistress. Let's see, maybe it says let's see if it's, I think it might be Dione.
Okay, consort of Dagon.
Okay, so here, sometime later, while Shamayim was in exile, he secretly sent his maiden daughter, Astarte, together with two other sisters of hers, Rhea, which probably would correspond to Asherah, and Dione, which would be Baalat Gevul, to kill El by stealth. El, however, caught the lasses and made the sisters his wives. Also, like, it needs to give other context, otherwise this made the sisters his wives implies some really dark shit. Because, I mean, basically, they're going over to kill... I mean, unless he's seducing them, which I think is a very real possibility. It's just... I wish it would actually go in... I mean, yeah, I think it's probably implied because at the end of the day, they're goddesses. They could always fight back against him. This is from before a time where there's this implicit superiority of like the gods over goddesses. Let's see. Made the sisters his wives. When Shamayim found out, he sent Destiny, which is Ashima, which would be Shah, maybe? I honestly don't know what hour would be. And other allies into battle against Kronos. These two Kronos won over and kept at his side. Against El. These two El won over and kept at his side. Also, he says, the god Shamayim further invented Beit-Els, or the Beit-Els, the houses of El, by devising stones endowed with life. El had 7 daughters, Titanids or Artemids, by Astarte, and again by Asherah he had 7 sons, the youngest of whom was made an object of worship at the time of his birth. By Dione or Baalat Gevul, he had 2 female children, and again by Astarte, 2 male children called Desire, which would be Eros, or I argue in Semitic would actually be Arash, and Love, which would be like Ahav or Ahava. Dagon, since he discovered grain and plow, was called Zeus Plowman. One of the Titanids mated with Okay, so let's see, does it Apollo? Is there another mention of Dione? Okay, here. Also, when El was traveling around the world, he gave the kingdom of Attica to his own daughter, Athena or Anat. At the occurrence of a fatal plague, El immolated his only son to his father Shemaim and circumcised himself, forcing the allies who were with him to do the same. And not long after this, when another of his children died, one born of Rhea or Asherah and called Mot, he made him an object of worship. The Phoenicians call him Death and Pluto. In addition, El gave the city of Byblos to the god Baaltis, who is also Dione, the goddess also known as the Lady of Byblos, which would be Baalat Gaval, and the city Beritos or Beirut to Poseidon, and to the Cabiroi, the hunters and the fishers who made relics of Pontos an object of worship in Beirut. The relics of Pontos? Wait a second. Relics of Pontos. Pontos is sea, right?
Yeah.
So it almost made the object of worship. Remember, worship is worthiness. So it almost seems like the relics, the treasures of the sea. It seems like this is probably a reference to the snail dies.
Those pearls, yeah.
Oh,
no.
yeah, that too. Yeah, I was about to say pearls, and then you said it. Took the words right out of my mouth. Let's see. Okay, so we're going to continue with this now. I just wanted to address that because, and so within that idea, it almost makes you think this idea of like the adoptive father, because like, so it's almost like, yeah, because in that case, that would actually make Hadad, Baal-Hadad, that by that definition would be not the son of El, he'd actually be his brother. Yeah, he would. Because El is the son of Shemaim, and so is Hadad. He's just raised by Dagon. And so I wonder if there might have actually been a context, like if given it does. See, so if that's the case, then that could basically mean that maybe that's why there was this idea that like Baal and Yah weren't on different levels, but that they were essentially that they were both like on the same level. It's just one had this role as a father of the gods, and the other had the role as the son of heaven. See what I mean? So like they're both on the same generational line. They both have power directly from their father, who is the same, and they're both essentially usurping it, except in this case, Baal, he's not usurping El, he's succeeding him. So he's almost becoming the successor in the same way that a younger brother is a successor to his older brother, if something were to happen.
Yeah, and they're kind of like dividing up the portfolio of their father as well. It's not like only one's getting it; they're sort of splitting it. Tag.
Yeah, they're doing they're doing just what Alexander's generals did. Though I guess in this case they're more so like turning themselves into some sort of like Siamese twins. Though I have a feeling that's probably not politically correct. I think there's another term that's used now to refer to conjoined. Yeah, I think it would just be conjoined twins. Right?
Yeah.
Anyway, let's continue. Or by continue, I mean actually get ready to start. Okay, so let's see. We're on, what Parsha are we on? Oh, right, it's Shemini. Shemini. Let's see, what is strange fire? Perfect.
Rabbi Yosef Dov Soloveitchik once said that had God not given us explicit permission to pray, we'd have no business doing so. What arrogance would it be for us to approach God? However, God not only allows, but even desires our prayers. But still we must respect the vast chasm that separates us from God. The desire for spirituality is often impatient with details and rules, regulations, and procedures. What difference does it make if I flick a light switch on 5 minutes after Shabbat comes in? Because if I don't, eating my Shabbos meal will not be spiritual and uplifting in the total dark. Isn't feeling the most important element of spirituality? In this week's Torah portion, the joy of Shabbos meal will not be spiritual and uplifting in the total dark. Isn't feeling the most important element of spirituality? In this week's Torah portion, the joyous event of the dedication of the Mishkan, the tabernacle, a joy that our sages compare to the creation of heaven and earth, is marred by the tragic death of two of Aaron's sons, Nadav and Avihu. Nadav and Avihu were consumed by fire when, unbidden, they entered into the sanctuary to offer incense. The Torah refers to this as strange fire. Strange because they weren't commanded to do so. Rabbi Yehuda Levi in the Kuzari explains that the fire represents their passion. They were passionate to come close to God, but they didn't respect the boundaries that God had set for us. The halacha is our boundary, and even if you have great passion to come close to God, you've got to respect those boundaries. The tragedy of Nadav and Avihu reminds us that, wonderful as fiery passion is, when not grounded in submission to the will of God, it represents the ego instead of the surrender of the ego. It cannot connect, and ultimately it will destroy. However, when the desire of the heart is focused through the lens of the law of the halacha, nothing is more desirable to God.
Okay, but why was it called strange or foreign fire? I love how we're just glossing over that.
I don't know. I could understand they were stealing Aaron's hashish. They're stealing his incense. So
Yeah, but what's foreign about that?
well, you're not supposed to bogart the high priest hashish. I think that's just against God's rules.
Let's see. Right here. Don't bogart the joint. Get it? Like joint but jeho.
Funny.
Good morning, Columbus. Thank you so much for tuning in to today's daily dose of digital Torah inspiration here at Sinai Studios, Judaism Today. In this week's Parsha Shemini, we have one of the most tragic episodes in Jewish history. It was the momentous of occasions, the moment they'd all been waiting for. The Jews had sinned with the golden calf, but God had forgiven them. He says he wants to dwell amongst us. He wants to place his presence in our camp, in our midst. Build me a Mishkan. The Mishkan is completed. It's the 8th day of the inauguration festivities. Everyone is excited and exuberant, thrilled beyond belief that the Jewish people have achieved their spiritual goal. And then tragedy strikes. Aaron's two sons, Nadav and Avihu, two kohanim, two holy people, two people who had beheld God himself at Sinai, die. They die. And not only that, they die in the context of the service itself, offering a sacrifice to God in the Holy of Holies. Why? The Torah says something very important and very instructive. The Torah says, "Vayakrivu lifnei Hashem eish zara, asher lo tziva osam," that they had offered a strange fire before God. And what made the fire strange? What was so terrible about this fire? Was it wrong? Did it have the wrong ingredients, the wrong intentions? No, says the Torah. The ingredients were right. The intentions was right. In fact, they had the highest level of kavod. Well, what was wrong? Asher lo tziva.
They weren't
That
commanded.
this was a offering that God had not. And to me, this is such an important lesson about Judaism. You see, it reminds us that we as Jews, The Torah, Judaism, halacha are not things that we mold to conform with that which we want. But on the contrary, what makes them meaningful and what makes them spiritual and what makes them important is the fact that God commanded, that God allows us access, right? That's really what it is. The reason why it's important to do it, to serve God on his terms, is because that's God allowing us access. And if God doesn't invite us in, then we're barging in inappropriately. We're not meant to be accessing him in that way at that point. Nadav and Avihu got carried away in their enthusiasm. Nadav and Avihu thought they could change the ritual and bring an offering that wasn't commanded of them. But the lesson of Nadav and Avihu for all time is that we don't have permission to change the ritual. That the Jewish rituals, the Jewish laws are incredibly important, spiritually sublime, exacting, and perfect. And that we need to approach them with a requisite humility and awe, and be so thankful and grateful that God allows us into his presence in this way. And in changing them, when we deviate from them, then that's not really even worshiping. That's just being self-fulfilling. Of course, as Jews, we need to infuse our personality into the mitzvos and our drives and our passion, and make it uniquely tailor them to us, but within the framework of halacha, within the framework of Jewish law, is what gives them their meaning and infinite depth and spirituality. To be a person of religion is to recognize the relationship between God and man, to recognize that we are finite and God is infinite, and we stand before him grateful and awed, with a tremendous sense of his vastness and majesty. And that is what it means not to offer a strange fire, to worship God in his terms, in the way he allows us in, so to speak. And that was Nadav and Avihu's failure, and our responsibility for all time. Have a great day. I hope you enjoyed that episode of Judaism Today.
Interesting.
If you did, please make sure to follow us on Facebook, subscribe on YouTube, or...
Still, it seems kind of interesting. So they didn't do anything wrong. It was just that God didn't command them to do it. It almost seems like trying to find a way to explain away the Zara, so they did work. They did temple service, avodah, and they presented a strange fire, Esh Zara. Now, do you know what the word for idolatry is? Avodah Zara.
Okay.
So they essentially did Avodah Zarah, and this is trying to explain why they didn't. Because, would be a bit of an issue if they aren't as monotheistic as... I don't think that this is saying that the Bible isn't true. I think that people are imposing on the Bible narratives that didn't exist at the time.
Insurance. We know this isn't a car.
We're not sure what that means. Obviously, they did something that was not prescribed by God, and but we're not sure exactly what that means. Whether it was something that they did procedurally. However, the other element that may not be so evident is that it must have entailed something in regard to their motivation and their heart, because we worship in spirit and truth, and we worship with our whole being, not just our body, but with our spirit, soul, and our heart. Of course, heart is one word referring to the essence of all who we are, not just that which includes the mind. So it's mind and heart. So they sinned in some way against the Lord. So sin always comes from the heart. So it must have had something to do with their heart motivation. But we don't know exactly, at least, commentators all say this, we don't exactly know what it is they did or didn't do properly. And because also this was, if you will, an inauguration of worship of God, just prior to this, the Israelites had ordained and installed their priests. And then they had their first formal worship. And so you could say that this was inaugurating a new era, if you will. Similar to the New Testament, when the church was inaugurated in the sense of Pentecost, Ananias and Sapphira were judged for, holding back their tithe to the Lord, and it was as an example for generations to follow. This too was something of an inauguration, and it could have served also as a reminder that we don't come to the Lord in a flippant way, and we need to be very careful that we come appropriately before a holy God, and that we worship according to His precepts, not ours.
Okay, is there anything that's not going to be so theological?
My guess would be probably not, but you can keep looking.
Oh, no. Let's see, Vlad Savchuk. This might be good.
Strange fire. What is it, and how should we avoid it?
No. Let's see what he says.
Be'ezrat Hashem, na'aseh v'natzliach. I'd like to welcome you to Ironside Lunch and Learn. Very excited to see everyone back after the Pesach holiday. This week's Parshah is Parshat Shemini. Before we get started, I'd like to give an honorable mention to Miss Dina Dornbush, who sponsored this class and sponsored this Lunch and Learn. Be'ezrat Hashem, that these divrei Torah will be to the Hatzlacha of the Dornbush family, as well as to the Leda Kala of Sheina Bat Dina, as well as Michelle Leah, who sponsored this class and sponsored this Lunch and Learn. Be'ezrat Hashem, that these divrei Torah will be to the Hatzlacha of the Dornbush family, as well as to the Leda Kala of Sheina Bat Dina, as well as Michelle Leah Bat Nina and Simcha Bat Shula, and to the great success of the upcoming marriage of Joseph Dornbush as well. This week's Parashah is Parshat Shemini. Something very unique has happened in the past few weeks, and it happens every few years. As a matter of fact, it's happening again next year, but it doesn't often come around. I think the last time that it was around was about 7 years ago, where we don't read Parashat Shemini because of the Pesach holiday, because Pesach was this holiday on Shishi Shabbat, right? It was exactly on Shabbat, and Motzei Chag, the second part of the holiday, also was on Shabbat. So Pesach has its own readings. There's specific readings that we read during the Pesach holiday that push off the Parashat HaShavua. So Parashat Shemini was supposed to be read 2 weeks ago, a week ago. So that's Sheni v'Chamishi. That's 1 week ago, Sheni v'Chamishi, that's 2. 2 weeks ago, Sheni v'Chamishi, that's 4. This week, Sheni v'Chamishi, that's 6. And on Shabbat, in Mincha, we read Parashat HaShavua also, that's 3 aliyot, so that's 2 more. So 8 times this parasha should have been read before we can even read it on Shabbat. So they say anytime that Parashat Shemini.
Oh, I just saw. Hey, William.
So many times, it becomes
And he also says morning ground.
Shmena, there's a big segula for Parnasah.
Hey, William.
In fact, this week there's a custom that the first Shabbat after Pesach, we bake bread, and inside sometimes in the shape of a key, and sometimes we bake chalot, and inside the chalot we put keys for the key of Parnasah. You should definitely try to do that this week, or try to buy one, or try to get someone to make it for you, to have a challah with a key inside for the Parnasah. And especially that Shemini is here, Shmena, it's good to maybe even get an aliyah so the rabbi can bless you to have a good, successful rest of the year. However, the parasha itself begins with the inauguration of the Mishkan. The first pasuk says, Vayhi bayom hashemini. It was on the eighth day. Which eighth day? It was the eighth day, Lamiluim. The eighth day that Moshe Rabbeinu was the one that was putting the Mishkan together, taking it apart, putting it all, basically before the inauguration, Moshe Rabbeinu was busying himself with it. So on the eighth day, after he did it for a full week, the eighth day is actually the first of Nisan. So Parsha Shemini is Rosh Chodesh Nisan. And at Rosh Chodesh Nisan, there's so many things going on. It's such a big day. Even right now, when we're celebrating the Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when we did the class on Nisan, we spoke about the greatness of that day. But back in history, back in the time when the Jewish people were in the desert, this eighth day, this Rosh Chodesh Nisan, very climactic day in emotions and feelings and in the Jewish spirit. We have over here, the Mishkan is finally built out. It took some time, but now it's finally built out. Remember, it took from the time that Moshe Rabbeinu came down from Har Sinai, and he said, "You are forgiven." And the first thing that he instructed us, keep Shabbat, build the Mishkan, because those are the two things that are the tools that we have for Teshuvah. Took them up until Chafhei Bekislev to put it all together, to create all the tools, all the Yeriyot, all the leathers, we spoke about all the different articles that take up to make up the Mishkan. It was put away in boxes until Moshe Rabbeinu took it in the month of Adar, on Chaf Gimel of Adar, to start putting it together. And on the eighth day of Moshe Rabbeinu dealing with it for 7 days, but we have it. And on this day, it's very, very exciting, because this is the thing that represents that Hashem has forgiven us. This is the thing that the Mishkan represents, that we have a way to get atoned for our sins through the korbanot, and we also have a way to get closer to Hashem if we want to bring a korbanot of thanks offering. And just as this is built out, what is it? The grand opening. Time to open it up. Time to make it work. So we have over there that the Nesi'im started to come and bring the korbanot. We have over there Nachshon ben Aminadav, who was going to be the first one. We have the kohanim all ready to work. They've already been trained. They've already been schooled on what's the proper thing to do. And all the Jewish people have gathered to see the Mishkan working. It's a big deal. It's a big day. And this is also the beginning of a new era of closeness to God. This is something like this, the beginning. Imagine, it's the Mishkan. This is like the first day that the Mishkan has come into the Jews' life, which eventually will graduate to be Bet HaMikdash. And what do we pray for every day? That the Bet HaMikdash will be built again. What do we say at the end of every Sfirat HaOmer? Every day. HaRachman, Hu Yachzir, Avodat Bet HaMikdash Bimhera Be'amenu, Amen. We don't stop asking for Bet HaMikdash. There's some Jews that they wake up in the middle of the night, Tikkun Chatzot, to do what? To pray for Bet HaMikdash, to pray for Yerushalayim to be built out again. So you see, this is the beginning of something huge. Just in the middle of all this happiness, in the middle of all this heightened level of emotions, a death is in the camp. 2 people die. 2 very important people die. Nadav and Avihu, the sons of Aharon HaKohen, have a fire that comes down from the heavens and goes straight into their nostrils, sucks out their soul, and they drop dead. Could you imagine? And this is before anything got started in the Mishkan. There was a human sacrifice, you can say, before any other sacrifice. 2 humans died inside the Mishkan before any other animal has died. And why? The Pasuk tells us, ותצא אש מלפני השם ותאכל אותם וימותו לפני השם. Why? Because ויקריבו לפני השם אש זרה אשר לא ציווה אותם. They brought into the altar, into the Mishkan, a strange fire that they weren't commanded. They brought forward a strange fire. Chazal have gone back and forth on trying to decipher what this Esh Zara is, and there's 15 different opinions that bring why they were killed in the Mishkan. Some say, or let's read Rashi, since he's the first commentary that we have in front of us. He says, "Vatetze Esh." Rabbi Eliezer Omer, "Lo metu bnei Aharon ela al yedei shehoru halacha mipnei Moshe Rabbeinu." They spoke a halacha in front of their rabbi, which, by the way, you're not allowed to. If there's a rabbi in the room and you're in the room, and somebody tells you, "What's the halacha for Birkat Hamazon when there's 6 people in the room?" and you shout out, "We do zimun, we don't do zimun," you're not allowed to do that. It's a big sin. You close your mouth and you wait for the rabbi to answer. You don't moreh halacha lifnei harav. So the Rashi tells us that Rabbi Eliezer says that's one of the reasons. It continues to say, Rabbi Ishmael Omer, "Shtuyei yain yichnesu lamikdash." They came in drunk. They drank wine. And after more research, we were able to find that those were not the only reasons. Chazal brought over 15 reasons why Nadav and Avihu died in that way. Besides being drunk, besides not being commanded to bring it and speaking a halacha in front of their rabbi, they say that because they were not married. They were kohanim that did not have wives. They said that they weren't clothed properly. There's another opinion that says that they weren't wearing a jacket. And we know that the kohanim, the kohen Ediot has 4 pieces, and the kohen Gadol has 8 pieces. So they were missing guard. Another opinion is that they did it out of their own accord. Nobody instructed them to do this. Nobody instructed them to go into the Mishkan and do anything. They decided on their own. As a matter of fact, the pasuk says, the full pasuk says, "Vayikhu bnei Aharon, Nadav and Avihu, ish machtato, vayitnu bahen esh, v'yasimu alei ketoret." They brought over a ketoret offering, which is the highest level offering in the Mishkan. Is the ketoret? You should know that. "Vayakrivu lifnei Hashem esh zara, asher lo tziva otam." They brought forward a strange fire that they were not commanded or instructed to do. So that's one of the reasons. They weren't instructed. Who told you to do it? They say that they came and did their service without washing their hands and without washing their feet. Another opinion holds that they had a thought that when they saw Moshe Rabbeinu and Aharon walking in front of them, they set between themselves, when are these 2 zekenim going to die so we can take over? And there's many more. Now, how is it possible that such tzaddikim can die in such a way? What kind of tzaddikim are they? I can tell you that there were top 4 in the Jewish nation. Aharon, Moshe, Nadav and Avihu. And then Moshe, Aharon, Nadav and Avihu, let's say. Okay? That's an elite club, this top 4. As a matter of fact, they were on a higher level of Moshe and Aharon. And Moshe testifies to it. In the Pasuk it says, Vayomer Moshe el Aharon. Moshe turns to his brother Aharon and he tells him, Hu asher diber Hashem le'emor b'krovai lekadesh. He says, this is what Hashem was talking about when he told me, b'krovai, in my close people, the closest people that are to me, akadesh, I will be sanctified. And Aharon, to be honest with you, I thought it was me and you. I thought when he said b'krovai akadesh, he meant, is there anybody closer to Hashem than me and you? Now I realize that Nadav and Avihu are the closest one to Hashem. So how is it possible that these holy people, these 2 spiritual giants, went this way? What was their intention? What was their kavanah?
You have any thoughts on what
Surely it
he's
was a
saying?
good one.
I think there's something interesting about this idea that, like, shoot, I just lost my train of thought, but yeah, what are your thoughts?
I think part of it is, again, sort of the, using the hash without permission, driving themselves crazy, killing themselves that way is one interpretation I see that hasn't been mentioned. But it's kind of very open to interpretation tag.
Yeah, definitely. But I do think there's a connection. Also, the fact that the Ketoret is the highest offering. Well, but on bumps. I didn't mean it like that, but also that. Anyway, here. We'll continue.
Right? Surely they had a good reason for what they did. What was it? Well, several opinions have been given also. One, they were overjoyed. They were so excited. They couldn't wait. They really wanted to connect to God. Finally, there's a Mishkan. They can get closer. They were super excited. They were on such a spiritual high, and they had such a strong desire, such a strong fire burning inside of them to what? To get closer to Hashem. Where did this fire come from? Well, before this, there was a very exclusive other club of only 74 people that can make it. And that was the club of the people that can come to Har Sinai. A few parashiot ago, we had Moshe, Aharon, Nadav and Avihu, private invitation to come to Har Sinai with 70 zakenim, 74 people. And at that moment, they saw and they felt the Shekhinah. They felt God. And they wanted it again so bad. They wanted it so strongly that they wanted to get to that feeling again. And they couldn't contain themselves. They couldn't wait. So being so overly excited, so overjoyed, they proceeded to bring a strange offering. Well, you could just say they were so excited that they wanted to express their joy to God. We get like that sometimes. What happens when we're so happy? Sometimes even like we make wrong decisions because we're so happy. I thought it was good. I was so excited to do this. I had good intentions. They say the way to hell is paved. The road to hell is paved on good intentions. Some of the worst things that have happened in the world had good intentions behind them. We'll go into that point later. Now, this dvekut, this yearning, this desire, this clinging onto Hashem that they were desiring so much was a good thing. It was so good, they were willing to die for it. They knew they were going to die. They knew. But they said, I am willing to die for God. They were at that level. They were willing to die to get closer to Hashem. That's the level they were on. And as a matter of fact, if we go back to what Chazal have said, that the reasons that they got killed, you can see that within each one, you can see how they were planning to get closer to Hashem. For example, one of the reasons was that they were drunk. Why did they drink? We know that when we drink wine, what happens? Yain brings you happiness, levity. So they say, we want to go to a higher level. We can't do it on our own. We need an agent. We need something to bring us there. We want to be so happy with Hashem. Oh, let's drink wine.
Interesting.
So we go to a higher level with Hashem. Good intention, but wrong. They said, we're not going to get married. One of the reasons that they said that they got punished is that they weren't married. Why weren't they married? They said, look, Moshe and Aharon are here. We don't know. Right now, they're the leaders. Moshe, we know, parash mishto. He left his wife. Why? He was on duty. One of the biggest reasons why Moshe Rabbeinu was such on a high level, because he had FaceTime with the Kadosh Baruch Hu whenever he wanted to. He was the leader of the Jewish people. That's why he was so high. If he wasn't the leader, maybe he wouldn't be on such a high level. But because he's the leader, because he sees God so oftenly, so right now he's the highest level that could be as a Jew. And they wanted that. So they said, listen, until Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron go, we don't know from us, from Nadav and Avihu, who's going to be Moshe. And if Moshe doesn't have a wife, then we have to stay without a wife. Because if it's me, then I'll continue my road without, let's say I'm Nadav. Then Nadav would say, then if it's me, then I'll continue without having a wife, and then you'll be able to marry like Aharon. And if it's you, then you'll continue without a wife, and I'll go and marry just like Aharon. They were prepared. All this to get closer to Hashem. Good intentions, but wrong. When they said that they weren't wearing the clothes and they were missing some clothes, they were missing, and they didn't wash their hands, what happens? You get overly excited. What happens when you get overly excited? You don't check every box. I was in such a hurry. I was in such a rush. I was so excited. I forgot something. They forgot a few things. And we see over here that when you want to get to a higher level to Hashem, it has to be a very strong infrastructure. You have to build your levels when you go up in religion, when you go up in spirituality. You can't go from being cheloni to tzaddik in one day. It's work. Slow and steady wins the race. Every so often you add another mitzvah, and another mitzvah, and another shiur, and another chizuk, and little by little you get there. You can't go from 0 to 60. You can't skip stages. You can't skip a jacket. You can't skip washing your hands. You can't drink wine in order to get higher. You have to get there on your own. And that's what they did over here. Their desire was so strong that they didn't do it in the proper way. They skipped stages. Their desire, their fire, caused them, as a matter of fact, the fire that caused them to do all this is the fire that killed them. Is the fire that burnt them. We learn from here the concept of Esh Zara, a strange fire, a foreign flame. What does that mean? Well, a strange fire basically means is that there is a desire, there's a flame, there's some sort of heat in you to do something, but it's not the norm. It's strange. It's not what is warranted. It's not what's wanted. It's not what's expected. It's strange. It's foreign.
I don't know. It seems like a judgment call.
Let's go into the pasuk, and it says, "Vayikhu bnei Aaron Nadav ve'Avihu." Rashi says over there, "Asher lo tziva." They weren't commanded. They took it on their own. Sheme'atzmam hitnadvu. They took it on their own. They made their own decision. What happened over here? They made it on their own. Again, furthermore, that they weren't commanded. Why is the Torah trying to emphasize all this that they weren't commanded? Well, one, what did we say was one of the reasons why they got killed? That they spoke a halakha in front of their rabbi. What was this halakha? Well, one of them is, did you consult with your rabbi if you can go to the Mishkan before everybody? Hey, rabbi, I have an idea. I want to go in front of the Mishkan, drink some wine, and praise Hashem. Is that allowed? They didn't do that. They went on their own. They didn't ask their father. Their father, Abba, Aharon HaKohen HaGadol. He's the chief rabbi. He's actually the boss of all bosses in the Mishkan. He's the one that's running the show. Go to your Abba. Abba, I love God. I want to get closer to Him. I want to do a lechaim with Him in the middle of the Mishkan. Can I do it? Please, Abba, please, 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 can I do it? They didn't even ask their father. They did something out of their own accord. And that's something that you can't do. You can't give yourself a license on how to worship God. You can't create your own way. You can't trailblaze a new way of worshiping Hashem. And I'll explain that. There, in religion, especially in our religion, there's levels. Some levels you can play in, some levels you can't even touch. We'll call it low voltage and high voltage. For example, if a kid or if an adult touches the electric, 110 volt, what happens? It gets zapped. In Israel, a little bit stronger, 220. Right? A person touches, Haz v'shalom, an electric pole, super high voltage. There's no zap, right? Over there, you get turned to a crisp. It's high voltage. It's thousands of volts running through you. You don't mess with that. It's on a different level. It's on a high level. We don't even mess with this. Do we mess with that? They were messing with high voltage. They were dealing with something that they weren't on that level yet. They could have gotten there. The rabbis tell us they were on a higher level. Moshe Rabbeinu and Aaron Kohen. They could have gone there. They skipped the steps. They didn't ask their superiors. They didn't follow the road that they're supposed to. So take a look. During the time of between Pesach and Shavuot, we read Pirkei Avot. The first Mishnah of Pirkei Avot tells you everything. Completely connected to what we're talking about. It says, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai. This is where it started. The beginning point of the Jewish nation, Moshe Rabbeinu got the Torah from Har Sinai from God. What did he do with it? He passed it on to Yoshua. And by the way, they say that we would have been a completely different nation if he would have passed it on to Nadav and Avihu. We would have been a completely different nation if the successors to Moshe and Aaron were Nadav and Avihu. No disrespect to Yoshua bin Nun in any way, but I heard this chidush from Rav Baruch Rosenblum. He says, had they not sinned, and they would have taken over, they were on such a high spiritual level, the nation of Israel, Am Yisrael, would have been at a much higher level. At a much, much higher level. Similarly to the 24,000 of Rabbi Akiva that we're mourning right now. We're growing a beard. Oh, what are we mourning? Are we mourning them? Who are they? We don't even know their names. We're not mourning them. We're mourning the Torah that we lost. These were 24,000 Torah giants that imagine if they stayed as part of Am Yisrael, how much more would be in our life? We would be a completely different nation if those 24,000 students continued. They would have married and had children, had students. You know how much we lost? We lost a lot with Nadav and Avihu. And all because they didn't follow the tradition, the Masorah, that is coming here on the first Mishnah that says, Moshe kibel Torah miSinai, u'mesara leYoshua, and he gave it to Yoshua, and Yoshua gave it to the Zkenim, u'Zkenim Nadviim, Zkenim gave it to our prophets,
but again, like,
and our prophets
what did they do that was
the
wrong?
Great Assembly. And those passed it on to the rabbis, and the rabbis passed it on to the rabbis, and so on.
It all depends on what age Sarah is.
My father taught it to me, and I'm here and I'm teaching it to you, and we're learning together. This is how the Jewish nation has continued. We have a Masorah that we pass it on. We survived 3,000 years because of this. Because we have a tradition of passing down the Torah.
Also, yeah, Masorah is tradition.
And why? The rabbis told us three things. Make sure that everything that you do is just, and you have a law system, courts and law systems. And have a lot of students. Teach and learn. And create a fence to the Torah. What's Vasus Yad Torah? You have to give people this is the Torah. You can't let them have direct access. You got to create a little bit of a fence, a little bit of a distance, so like that if they make wrong decisions, they don't get zapped by the high voltage. They get zapped by the low voltage, 110, 220, not 10,000 volts. The sayag, all the halakha.
Part of it's this idea that if you know the Torah and then you go against it, then like you know it and you're choosing to go against it. Versus if you just don't know and you're ignorant, then it's like you can't really be held accountable. Which itself feels kind of like a loophole to me, to be completely honest. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I break it down to you're still accountable for the effects of what you did. It's a difference between a mistake and a sin. You know, if you didn't intend the bad effect, then you're not responsible for having the bad intent. You're still responsible for the negative outcome of your action. Okay.
Yeah, if only things were so simple.
Well, it's humans overcomplicating yet again.
Yeah.
What the rabbis have set up for us is just a gadeh. It's a fence, so we don't get too close and get zapped like Nadav and Avihu. We might get a smaller zap, but not a big one. That's what the halachot are. And we see over here that this Eshes Zara is teaching us, don't create your own way. Let me give you three other stories in history. The story of Shaul. You know Shaul HaMelech? He had a mission to kill Amalek. And he did it. He was almost there. 99% of the Amalek people were dead. His mission was kill the Amalek nation. Our biggest enemies. The ones that are always out to get us. What did he do? He left one king alive and their animals. So the Amalek people were sorcerers, shapeshifters. They were able to turn from human beings into animals. And the king stayed alive. And on that night that he stayed alive, what happened? He slept with a maidservant, and from her, and she got pregnant. And his grandson was Haman. And who was Haman? Wanted to annihilate all the Jews in one day. Why, Shaul? Why? You were right there. Just follow instructions. No, I thought maybe I'll bring the king, and then it'll be a big Kiddush Hashem, and I thought that all these fat animals, I'll bring them for the Korban. Why, Shaul? Why? Why did you make up your own way? Why didn't you just follow instructions? Until today, we're dealing with Amalek. We have another story of Shlomo. Shlomo Melech was instructed, don't marry so many women. It's going to be trouble. He said, no, I know what I'll do. I'll marry a woman from each one from a different continent, and they'll all be my wives. And like that, we'll have some sort of like shalom b'chol ha'olam, because they'll all be part of me. In the end, what happened? His downfall was the woman and the money. Why didn't you follow the instruction? Nowadays, not to go like too far off, we have the conservative and the reform movement. What is their approach? What did they say? Look, I like the Torah. I really do. I like everything about it, except it's like 5. They don't fit my lifestyle right now. So we got to take that out. I go to that pasta restaurant that has a calamari on top. Shabbat, I cannot go to the beach on Shabbat. You got to get rid of that. And by the way, I like the Torah. I really do. I like everything about it, except it's like 5. They don't fit my lifestyle right now. So we got to take that out.
Except what, 5?
Restaurant that has a calamari on top. Shabbat, I cannot go to the beach on Shabbat. You got to get rid of that. And by the way, did you see my wife? She must sit next to me in shul. It's the honorable thing to do. We respect women. They see separate seating as not being respectful. So they just tweak a few things around. And then we have the reforms that just delete it. Not switch, deleted things. Why? They're forging their own way. What do we learn over here? You're bringing in Eshazarah. This whole prayer that you're bringing now to shul, it's a strange fire. You have a desire to get close to Hashem. You're doing it the wrong way. You're doing it the wrong way.
Something tells me there's some people who might see me as being a bit of a Nadav or an Avihu. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I was going to say, I'm 100% in that category. Part of it is you have it's a balance of things. Everybody has their own path to tread, and you don't have your path rewritten in the Torah or anything. You still got to make decisions on your own, and yeah, sometimes you're still held accountable for them. Tag.
Yeah, I don't know. I just think it's kind of interesting because at the end of the day, I am only as God made me. And like, yeah, you could say, oh, well, what about accountability? But at the end of the day, I can't help what interests I have. I can't help what I'm good at. That's all stuff that if you believe in God, you have to believe God gives to you. And like, yeah, you can improve on things. You can choose what to do. But at the end of the day, the stuff that I've been finding, I don't see a clash between the idea of monotheism and polytheism. I think it's merely an issue of what people worship versus, now people have this idea to believe a God exists is to believe in that God, when that just simply isn't the case.
No, definitely. I was going to say, I try to keep it simple. For me, it boils down to if, once everything's said and done, if when I'm standing before God, if I can sit there and say, I did my best, now you do your worst. Yeah, that's my goal.
I don't know that you should be asking God to do his work or God to do their worst, but like,
oh, that's what's going to happen anyway. You're held accountable.
Yeah, but maybe you'll end up realizing, well, God was actually much nicer than people talked about. But God being so nice wants to grant you your wish, and so he's literally going to do his worst simply because you asked him to.
I was going to say it's up to God either way. So.
Yeah. Well, what did I say? Let go, let God.
Exactly.
Yeah. Just make sure that if you are going to let go, you're not letting go of the wheel, because Jesus won't have it. At least not literally.
You're saying you can't use God as your designated driver?
Definitely not. I mean, you might have to explain what happened to some archons, but they're not going to be the type that you can just whisper or rather shout secret names of God at and make them go away. That's how you end up in a psych ward.
Good point.
No, but honestly, I wouldn't be surprised if someone took that to a really, really dangerous degree and they're like, oh, all these archons they're trying. Like, there's some people who, I mean, and that's one of the reasons why I think it's really important that people who are seen as, more mainstream or is a bit more, what's the word? Not like, not fringe, cover these topics, because it's kind of one of those things that you can't cede that territory to really to any one person, because that's how it ends up being monopolized. Like the whole idea of, Gnosticism or whatever. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people who could take it in a dark way, but that's only if they choose to.
Well, you can take just about anything in a dark way. So
Really, even sunshine and rainbows?
oh yeah.
I
was
know.
gonna say I was gonna say I can overdose on binging on My Little Pony shows.
Wait, as in you watch it?
Yeah, I had a daughter, Ariel.
No, I'm not judging. I was just wondering because, like, the way you said it, like that you could overdose, as in, like, I didn't know if you meant like watch too much, as in because you watched a little, or watch too much because you could literally watch it until.
Oh, I watched a little bit. I could definitely tell. I don't know how many hours it is. Yeah, for me, probably about, if I get past about 2 hours, I think I've had too much of it. Tag.
There's some people who probably would binge it. But
Oh, definitely. That's why I said my call was 2 hours.
Yeah, it's actually kind of funny. When I was, I think, 13 or so, my girlfriend at the time, she tried to get me into it, and I don't know. I couldn't get into it. Maybe if I was younger at the time, but no. Like, also, I feel like I should clarify, just because she was the same age as me, just in case it wasn't clear. She just still liked My Little Pony.
Again, that's why I sit there and say, sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah. Anyway, let's finish this, and we'll actually start and finish the chapter.
And he passed it on, and on, and on, and on, and on, and on, all the way to here today, that we know that when you are an Orthodox Jew, you're following it the right way. And on, and over on, there's some people that are not religious. Not a big deal. They'll get there. Inside of them is that beautiful Jewish spark. As long as they get there at one point, Bezat Hashem, we pray for them. They're not practicing, or they don't know, is one thing. But to distort it, that's for sure not. That's for sure not acceptable.
But again, what is distortion? I mean, if something is actually in Torah and you don't even have to twist it in order to get it to say that, are you distorting it? I really think that would be a hard thing to say. The other case is you could argue that distortion happened, but if you do that, then you're basically arguing that the Torah. But see, that's the thing. It's like, basically, you can't be a critical scholar and be considered a, like, I mean, you could be a religious Jew, but can you be like a, I don't know. It's like, it's hard to explain. Like, you're like, basically, by doing, by being a critical scholar, you're essentially saying that I don't believe that everything is as it said, and by doing that, you're kind of singling yourself out.
Well, the territory I think you're mining there are basically three points that you can rest, basically religious authority upon. You got the scripture, you got, your ecclesiastical tradition, in your priest class, and then you have your personal interpretation. And any two of those you can easily reconcile. I mean, a person can read their scripture and come up with their own interpretation and have no problem. But they're often going to run into problems with the priests. And the priests in the scriptures, they come into it, and that's usually what happens, is they agree with the scriptures, and it's the people who are just left out in the cold. Tag.
Interesting. Yeah, I see where you're coming from.
Don't serve Hashem with an eshezara. Don't serve Hashem with your own way. That you're willing to do A, B, C, one, Hashem, everything, but X, Y, and Z doesn't fit my life. That's before your own way. You're already serving yourself. You're not serving God. You have your own religion. Whatever your name is, call it your religion. There's only one way to serve God. And what do we learn from here? That bigger Jews than us failed. Shlomo, Shmuel, Nadav and Avihu, that are on such a huge level that we don't even understand what even happened there. What I'm telling you right now is probably maybe the tip of the iceberg. Who knows the sodot of this situation? They tried to forge their own way and they failed, and it's documented. We don't want an Esh Zoresh Lo Tziva. Hashem says, this is the way you worship me. No other way. The other ways just don't work. We learn from here that the best way to do it is the right way. If you're ever going to become religious, if you are religious, if there's anything that you're going to do in Yahadut, do it the right way. And if you're not doing everything, whatever that you're doing.
Or is it possible that what he's saying is, I want to have a monopoly on what a religious Jew is?
Yeah, that's the concept behind the rebellion of the priest class. The priest class taking control of society. Okay.
Oh, whatever went wrong when that happened?
Oh, it's happened a bunch of times. I was going to say that's one of the things that happened with Ashurbanipal. He was actually able to read the actual the writings of the priests, and found out that he'd been lying to the kings for years, and that was such a nightmare tag.
What happened when he found out?
We don't know, because we have well-documented records for the first part of his reign, but the last 10 years we have almost no records. Go figure why they didn't get written.
I'm sure he treated them to a wonderful lifetime stay at a resort up in the mountains of Kish.
Very, very well taken care of up there. He made sure that they got what they deserved. Yep, I'm sure.
Wait, did they even have just desserts?
Oh, funny.
Do it the right way. Don't create this weird hybrid version of religion. God knows my heart. God knows. No. God is not here to figure out everybody's hearts, and He knows that this is the way I hold the kippah, and this is what I do on Shabbat, and I only smoke one cigarette, I only use my phone, I only go to this restaurant, only to eat fish. Don't create your own way. Do one thing, do it right. It's slow and steady wins the race. Little by little, you get to the promised land. Add one mitzvah at a time until you can do the whole thing the right way. Always report to Hashem, I'm a work in progress. I'm getting there. Wait for me. Give me a chance. But look, when I do Netilat Yadayim, it's the right way. When I do Birkot HaShachar, it's the right way. When I do Birkat Hamazon, it's the right way. I'll get to the other 612, 611, 619. I'm checking them off. I'm going to get there. But at least you know, Hashem, that I'm doing it the right way. I'm not creating my own religion. I'm not bringing in front of you Esh Zara. When I bring Esh. Esh Sheli. I'm bringing my own fire the way you want it, the way you like it. That's what it is. B'ezrat Hashem, shenizkeh to bring an Esh Amitit, not an Esh Zara. Esh Avodat, in your whole Avodat Hashem should be Esh with fire, with desire, with a yearning, like Nadav and Avihu. But a little bit different. Just do it the way that we were instructed. That's why we have rabbis. That's why we have books. That's why we have the Torah. That's why we have God. He gave us the instruction manual on how to succeed in this world. He gave us the Bible. And what does the Bible stand for? Basic instructions before leaving Earth. You're here. You want to know what to do while you're here? Pick up the Torah. It's like this. How do I eat? How do I sleep? How do I walk? How do I work? How do I raise kids? Everything is there. And it's a success manual. And have a great Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shemini.
Wait, what is Shabbat Shemini? Oh,
I saw war.
Shabbat Shemini?
When I bring is there. And it's a success manual. And have a great Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shemini. Everything is there. And have a great Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shemini.
Oh, Shabbat Shemini.
And have a great Shabbat Shalom and a Shabbat Shemini.
Okay, so here, let's actually start now. So, now I just need to figure out where we were.
I saw war. I saw bombing.
Alright, so, let's see. Is it here? Shoot. Wait, what happened? I'm signed into... Dang, hold on. Okay, let's see. It should be in my subscriptions. Okay, how should I do this? Let's see, subscriptions. Where would it be? Subscriptions. Here, let's see, list. Shoot. I can't for the life of me remember what that one channel was. Oh wait, actually I know what I could do. It would have been in the history of this. I just need to find it. Oh wait. History. Perfect. Just give me one moment and we'll be able to find this. Shoot. I know I'll be able to find it. It's going to take a while. All right. Anyway, any thoughts in the meantime while I'm looking for this?
I was going to say, no, I was just thinking back on the whole red heifer thing. I was going to say, now it's the point of them being red, they come pre-barbecued sauce.
Oh, funny.
Yeah. Hey, Yahweh likes his barbecue. We know that for sure.
Shoot, I have no clue where this would be. Let's see, search. It's like 30 minutes. Okay, March 31st. It would probably be here.
Yeah, my thought is to look at the date we did the last show. That should happen. The last time.
Oh, right. That's a good call. Let's see. Yeah, here. I'll just do that. Live. Here. Hi. Hi. It is from Shael Kriel. Right, I remember that now. Hi. Shael Kriel. Oh, come on. Is this not? Oh. Please tell me it's going to show up. Seriously? Subscription? Curiel. Maybe Curiel. Curiel. Huh. Oh, here. That's weird. It didn't show up before. So we're on videos. Let's see. Leviticus. Where's it? Shemini. Here.
Can't go.
So
Do this to clear out stuck poop fast. On June
excuse me?
17th in 2019.
Why? All right. So let's see. Where is it? Here. All right. So we'll start with this. Barechu et Adonai Amvorach, Baruch Adonai Amvorach leolam vaed, Baruch ata Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher bachar banu mikol hamim venatan lanu et torato, Baruch ata Adonai noten haTorah. All right, now where was it? Oh, here. Okay. And then what speed is it at? Have it set to 125.
השמיני, ויהי ביום השמיני, קרא משה לאהרון ולבניו ולזקני ישראל, ויאמר אל אהרון, קח לך עגל בן בקר לחטאת, ואיל לעולה תמימים, והקרב לפני אדוני, ואל בני ישראל תדבר לאמור, קחו שעיר עזים לחטאת, ועגל וכבש בן שנה תמימים לעולה, ושור ואיל לשלמים לזבוח לפני אדוני, ומנחה בלולב השמן, כי היום אדוני נראה עליכם, ויקחו את אשר ציווה משה אל פני אוהל מועד, ויקרבו כל העדה, ויעמדו לפני אדוני, ויאמר משה, זה הדבר אשר ציווה אדוני תעשו, וירא עליכם כבוד אדוני. ויאמר משה אל אהרון, קרב אל המזבח ועשה את חטאתך ואת עולתך, וכפר בעדך ובעד העם, ועשה את קורבן העם, וכפר בעדם, כאשר ציווה אדוני, ויקרב אהרון אל המזבח, וישחט את עגל החטאת אשר לו, ויקריב בני אהרון את אליו, ויטבול אצבעו בדם, וייתן על כנוף המזבח, ואת הדם יסק אל יסוד המזבח, ואת החלב.
It's interesting because there's multiple, so this translates it as Yesod HaMizbeach, where was it? It's Bobadam Veitan al Karnamas. At Yesod. So this is a foundation. There's other words that could use, but well, actually no. For Yesod, it's got to be foundation. But it could say the base, but it says the foundation. That's also one of the Sefirot, which is kind of interesting. I wonder if there's connections to that.
ويتهيأ من الكبد منها حطات يقدير هم زليقا كأشير صبا أدوناي إث موشي وإث البصر وإث عور صرف بإيش محوس لما عني ويشحط إث علا ويمصي بني أهارون إلو إث الدم ويزرقيه على المزبيح سبيب وإث علا يمصي إلو لنثحيها وإث روش ويقتير على المزبيح ويحاس إث قيرب وإث كرعايم ويقتير على علا المزبيح ويقريف إذ قربان عام ويقاف إذ سعير حطت أشير لعام ويشحطيه ويحطيه كارشون ويقرف إثها علا ويعسيها كم مشبار ويقرب إثم منها ويملي خبه منا ويقتير على المزبيع من لباس علا ثبو قير ويشحط إثها الشر وإثها آيل زيبح الشلميم أشير لعم بني أهارون اتهدم إله ويزرقيه على المزبيع سبيف وإثها حلبيم منها الشور ومنها آيل ها أليا وها مخسي وها كليوث ويثيرث الكبير ويسيم إثها حلبيم عليه حزوث ويقتر ها حلبيم هم مزبيعة وإثه حزوث وإث شوق هيامين هنيف أهرون تنفع لفني أذوناي كأشير سوا مشي ويسا أهرون إث يذاو الهعام ويفارخيم ويسا أهرون إث يذاو الهعام ويفارخيم ويرد معسوس ها حطاث وها علا وهالشلميم ويابو مشي وآهرون الأوه المعيد ويصئوا ويبارخوا إثها عام ويرخبوا أذوناي الكلها عام وتيسي إيش من لفني أذوناي وتوخل على المزبيح إثها علا وإثها حلبيم ويار كلها عم ويارونو ويبلو على بينهم ويقحوا ذني أهرون نداب وأبيهو ويارون ويبلو على بينهم ويقحوا ذني أهرون نداب وأبيهو إيش محدثوا ويتنوا بهن إيش ويسيموا عليها بطوري ويقريبوا لفني أدوني إيش زرع أشير لو صفا أثام وتسئش من لفني أدوناي وتوخل أثام ويموث لفني أدوناي ويومر مشي الأهرون هو أشد دبر أدوناي لمر بخروباي إقاديش وعلى بيني خلها عام إكابد ويدوم أهرون ويقرأ مشي.
Wait, seriously, it's like, so they die. What is it? A fire. They brought before Hashem a fire that was alien that he had not commanded them, and a fire went forth from before Hashem and consumed them, and they died before Adonai. And Moses said to Aaron, well, this is probably, I'm paraphrasing here, but this is probably, or literally, this is what Adonai spoke saying, or 𤤔𐤌𝐤𝑉𝍉, in my midst, Kadesh, I will sanctify, or in my midst, I will be sanctified, ve'alpnei, and upon the face, and before kol ha'am, and before all the people, ekaved, I will be honored. Vayidom Aharon, and Aaron was silent, almost like he was stunned. He was mute. It's like mic drop, but like, how is Aaron just going to be silent to that? He's like, his two sons just.
هارون ويقرأ موشي الميشائيل والصفان بني
Whoa.
عزيئ.
This is wild because El Safan, that's the god of Safon, or it's saying, El is treasured, but literally El Safan, I mean, it would be one thing if it was Baal Safan, but this is kind of interesting. I never noticed this character before. El Safan.
دود أهارون ويومر عليهم שאו את אחיכם מאת פני הקודש אל מחוץ למחנה ويقربوا ويسقوا בחותנותם אל מחוץ למחנה כאשר דיבר משה ויאמר משה אל אהרון ולאלעזר ולאיתמר בניו ראשיכם אל תפרעו ובגדיכם לא תפרומו ולא תמותו ועל כל העדה יחשוף ואחיכם כל בית ישראל יבכו את השרפה אשר שרף אדוני אשר ואחיכם כל בית ישראל יפעל כל העדה יחשוף ואחיכם כל בית ישראל יבכו את השרפה יחשוף ואחיכם כל בית ישראל יבכו את השרפה אשר בית ישראל יבכו.
Interesting. So this is basically saying Moses said to Aaron and to Eleazar and to Itamar, his sons, the hair on your heads, or your heads, do not tifra'u, do not allow it to grow long, the hair. Ubigdotechem. So it's saying because if they're mourning, they wouldn't cut their hair. So don't let your hair get long, and your clothing do not tifro param. I guess that's saying do not rend it. Velo tamutus, so that you will not die. Ve'al kol, and upon Haidat, the assembly Yitzov, he would become wrathful. It almost seems like they're what's the word, propitiating? They're like keeping God away from tormenting the Israelites. That seems to be what it's saying. But no, it's basically saying if they rend their clothing, then they'll also die because they won't have been like proper before Adonai. Is that what you're getting as well? It's almost like just because you're mourning doesn't mean you can rip your biohazard suit.
Exactly.
Or I guess this is more like wearing some sort of lead suit while working in a nuclear reactor. I don't know. But in any case. Wait. He would become wrathful. Rather, your brethren, the entire house of Israel, shall weep over the burning that Hashem burned. The burning that Hashem burned.
Adonai umipetach oil po'ed lo תסעו פן תמותו כי שמן משחת אדוני עליכם ויעשו
It's almost like
דבר
the
משה.
anointment is some sort of like secret passcoder. It allows the archons to not see you, or allows you to enter the secret chamber.
וידבר אדוני אל אהרון לאמור יין ושכר אל תשת אתה ובניך איתך בבואכם אל אוהל מועד ולא תמותו חוקת עולם לדורותיכם ולהבדיל בין הקודש ובין החול ובין הטמא ובין הטהור ולהורות את בני ישראל את כל החוקים אשר דיבר אדוני עליהם ביד משה וידבר משה אל אהרון ואל אלעזר ואל איתמר בניו הנותרים קחו את המנחה הנותרת מאישי אדוני ואכלו המסוף אצל המזבח כי קודש קדשים היא ואכלתם אותה במקום קדוש כי חוקך וחוק בניך היא מאישי אדוני כי כן צוויתי ואת הזה התנופה ואת שוק התרומה תאכלו במקום טהור אתה ובניך ובנותיך איתך כי חוקך וחוק בניך ניתנו מזבחי שלמי בני ישראל שוק התרומה וחזה התנופה על אישי החלבים יביאו להניף תנופה לפני אדוני והיה לך ולבניך איתך לחוק עולם כאשר ציווה אדוני ואת שעיר החטאת דרוש דרש משה והנה שורף ויקסוף על אלעזר ועל איתמר בני אהרון הנותרים לאמור מדוע לא אכלתם את החטאת במקום הקודש כי קודש קדשים היא ואותה נתן לכם לשאת את עוון העדה לכפר עליהם לפני אדוני כי קודש קדשים היא ואותה נתן לכם לשאת את עוון העדה לכפר עליהם לשאת את עוון העדה לכפר עליהם לפני אדוני הן לא הובא את דמה אל הקודש פנימה אכול תאכלו אותה בקודש כאשר ציוויתי וידבר אהרון אל משה הן היום הקריבו את حط ثام وإذ عول ثم رفني أذناي وتقرين أوتيك إلي وأخالتي حطت أيوم أي طاف بعيني أذناي ويجمع موشي ويطاف بعيناو ويدبر أذناي الموشي والأهرون لمور عليهم دبروا البني إسرائيل لمور زوت حيا أشير تأكلوا مكل هالبهما أشير على الأرض كل مفرسة فرسان وشو صعب شي صعب برصوص ما على ثقيرة ببهما وثاه تخيلوا افزي لو ثوخلوا مما عليه هجرا ومما فريسي حبرسا اتهجمال كيما عليه غرا هو وفرسا إنه مفريس طعمه لخيم وإث الشفان كيما عليه غيره وفرسا لو يفريس هو وفرسا إنه مفريس طعمه جرا ومن مفرسه حبرسا اتهجما كل مفرسه فرا أشير على الأرض كل مفرسه فرسا وشو صعب شي صعب برصوص ما على ثقيرة ببهما وثاه تخيلوا افزي لو ثوخلوا مما عليه هجرا ومما فريسي حبرسا اتهجمال كيما عليه غرا هو وفرسا إنه مفريس طعمه لخيم وإث الشفان كيما عليه غيره وفرسا لو يفريس طعمه لخيم وإثها أرنيفس كيما على كراهي وفرسا لو يفريسا ضمئاهي لخيم وإثها حزير كيما فريس فرسان وشو ساع شي ساع فرسان وهو جرالو يقار طعمه لخيم مبسران لو ثوخينو وفني بلاثام لو ثقاعو طمئيم هم لخيم افزي تأكلوا مكل أشير بمايم كل أشير لو سنبير وقسطيسيت بمايم بيمين وبالنحاليم وثم تخيلوا ويقول أشير إن لو.
This is interesting. I just realized this. Mayim and Yamim have the same. Well, in this, it doesn't have the extra yud because they don't want to render a double yud because it's the name of God. So that would be like, and I mean, it's written a specific way, in the tradition, but it is a double yud. At least that would be the pronunciation. But it's kind of interesting that Mayim and Yamim, they both have the two yuds and the two mems. It's almost like you have the mem, which is the waters, and the yud, which is God. So it's like the spirit of God, Ruach Elohim, Merachafet al Pnei Amayim, the spirit of Elohim, or the wind of God, was upon the face of the waters. I don't know. That's just my interpretation of that.
סנפיר וקשקשת בימים ובנחלים מכל שרס המים ומכל נפש החיה אשר במים שכס הם לכם ושכס יהיו לכם מבשרם לא תאכלו ואת נבלתם תשכסו כל אשר אין לו סנפיר וקשקשת במים שכס הוא לכם ואת אלה תשכסו מן העוף לא יאכלו שכס הם את הנשר ואת הפרס ואת העזנייה ואת הדאה ואת האיה למינה פרס ואכלו ואת אלה תשכסו מן העוף לא יאכלו שכס הם את הנשר ואת הפרס ואת
So let's see. So this is, I'm just going to look this up real quick because this is relevant. Let's see. Tell me Safaria is working. Please, come on, Safaria. No, Safaria. Is it working? Is it working? Are you working? Okay, maybe. Texts. We're looking for Leviticus. Here. Shemini. We're on 6, I think. Alright, it's talking about the clean and unclean animals. Right here. So, at Haperes. So the Peres is the bird of prey, possibly a vulture. The Oznia, something to do with ears, maybe. Unclean bird of prey, osprey, black eagle, buzzard. The Nesher is the eagle, or vulture, but no, it's the eagle. Shekets. Let's see, Da'a. The Da'a is the kite, I think. The darter? I don't know. The kite, I think. Yeah, kite. Vet ha'aya. Aya is it's falcon. Lemina after its kind. And then the Kol Orev, all the Orev is the raven, which is connected to I think to Elisha, maybe. I forget what tradition. I mean, let's see. Et Bat Hayana. Let's see. Ya'ana, and the daughter. The Bat Ya'ana, the daughter of Ya'ana, the daughter of the owl, daughters of the owl. I feel like that. This honestly might be a reference to Anat. I don't know. Batanat. I really don't know. Ve'et ha-tachmas. Interesting. Interesting. Apparently, Hamas is a male ostrich because of its violence. One second, let me just sum that. What else is there? Bet ha-shachaf. Shachaf, the seagull, or the cuckoo, maybe. Ve'ed ha-hanetz. And the perhaps extinct bird, hawk falcon, Leminehu, the Hakos, the cup owl, the Shalach, it says probably the cormorant, the Hayan Shuf, and the great owl. The Et Hatin Shemet. From Neshem was saying either can alien ibis. Interesting. Perhaps the ibis, which would connect it to Thoth, which is interesting because what was it? Nabu and Tashmetum, and this is Tanshemet. Tashmetum. It's really close. I don't know. Let's see. I don't know. It's interesting if it's the ibis, but Bet haracham, and the racham is the pelican. It's saying no carrion vulture. That doesn't make sense. Racham means have mercy. Ka'at is the cormorant, and the racham is the this. I don't know. It seems because the chasidah here, it's talking about the stork. Chasidah and then racham, the two are connected because it's let's see, chasidah hanefa. Is there any commentary on this? I'm going to look this up. Oh shoot, too much commentary to really go over. I just want to skim over it. The chasidah bird that is kosher, that is not kosher, that is because that it performs kindness with her friends with food. This does not come from Rashi's wisdom in the ways of nature, but rather it is from a Gemara in the words of Rav Yehuda, Chulin 63a, and the fact that she is impure, unkosher, even because of her kindness. I heard those who say that it is because she only performs kindness to her friends, and the source of those words is the Chidushei Harim on the Torah. And the stork, some say Chasidah is the bird which appears at certain known times in the year. Others say that it scatters loving kindness, chesed. This is far-fetched. Shoot, I'm not signed in. I'll have to add this later. Okay, let's just read it. Okay. And the hupo, wait, what's the hupo? Duchifat? Is that the hupo? Duchifat. Duchifat. That's such a... Imagine naming your dog Duchifat. Duchi! Come here, Duchi! Duchifat. The atalef. The atalef is the bat. But apparently, bat is also ashman, which potentially is connected to Eshmon. Anyway, so I think we read... Yeah, we reread that, so we're going to go back to the video and finish that out. Any thoughts, though?
Particular.
All right.
عزنية وقيت حداء وقيت ها أيا لمناه إذ كل عريف لمنو وقيت باخيا عنا وقيت التحماس وقيت الشاحف وقيت النيس لمنيه وقيت الكوس وقيت الشلاخ وقيت اليمشوف وقيت التنشيمت وقيت الطاقات وإثها رحام وإثها حسيدا ها أنا فالميناه وإثها الدوخفات وإثها عطليف كل شيري صعوف ها هوليخ على الأربعة شيقيس هو دخيم إثزي توخلو مكل شيري صعوف ها هوليخ على الأربعة أشير له خير عايم مما على اللي رغلاو لنكتير بهين على الهقاريس إثقلي مهم توخلو إثها أربي لمينو وإثها السلعان لمينيهو وإثها حرقول لمينيهو وإثها حغاب لمينيهو ويخل شيريس هعوف أشير له 4 رغلايم شيقيس هو لخيم والقلة يطمعوا كل هالنوغي عبيني بلا ثام يطمع
It doesn't say it's detestable or it's despicable or it's an abomination. It says it's an abomination for you or to you. So it's this idea that there's nothing wrong with it. It's just, it's not for you. It's kind of like, it's like there's nothing wrong with cheese. Some people are just lactose intolerant. You know what
exactly.
I mean?
It's you shouldn't hit your daddy's stash. Your daddy's the head priest. Don't hit his stash.
Imagine if people are like, well, we need to kill all these impure animals because they're impure. It's like, well, you completely missed the point then. In fact, you could argue, well, in a sense, depending on how you view it, you could actually argue that it's better for an animal to be unkosher because then it's not going to be killed for, well, then again, it doesn't really mean much if most of the world doesn't follow those laws anyway, but I don't know, just kind of interesting. All right, we're almost done. Sweet.
Sorry, yeah. Kind of echoes the old saying, better to be Herod's pig than Herod's son.
Yeah, better to be a poor man in Rome than a king in Gaul. Or better to be a nobleman in Rome than a king in Gaul. Whatever, you know what I mean? Same concept.
Yeah.
من نبلة يخبز بغداو ويطمي عارف لخل هبهما أشير هي مفرست فصلا وشيسع إننا شوسع وغيرا إننا ما على طمئيمهم لخم كل النغيع بهم يطمع ويخول وليخ على الكباو ويخولها حية هاو ليخيف على الأربع طمئيمهم لخم كل النغيع بنبلتام يطمع عارف وهالنوسف اثني بلثام يخبس بغداو ويطمع عارف طمئيمهم لخيم وزي لخم هالطمي بالشيرس الشوق النغيع بني بلثام يطمع عارف وهالنوسف اثني بلثام يخبس بغداو ويطمع عارف طمئيمهم لخيم وزي لخم هالطمي بالشيرس الشوريس على هارس هحولد وها أخبار وها الصاب لمينيو وها أناقا وها الكوح وها اللطاء وها حومت وها التنشامت اللي هالطمئيم لخيم بخل هالشارس كل النغيع بهم بمثام يطمع عارف ويقول أشير يبول على مهم بمثام يطمع مكل كلي عس أو بغير أعور أرساق كل كلي أشير يعسي ملخا بهم بمايم يبا ويطمي على عيرب وطهير ويخول كلي حارس أشير يبول مهم التوخو كل أشير بثوخو يطمع وأثوث يشبورو مكل هؤخيل أشير يأخيل أشير يفو عدم ما يطمع بخل مشكي أشير يشتي بخل كلي يطمع بخل أشير يبول من نبلتام عدم يطمع تنور وخرايم يداس تمئيمهم متمئيم ييو لخيم أخ معيان وفور مكوي مايم يي طهور ونغيع بنبلتام يطمع وخي يبول من نبلتام على كل زرع زروع أشير يزرع طهور وخي يتنمايم على الزرع ونفال من نبلتام علو طميه لخي وخي يتن مايم على الزرع ونفال من نبلة وخي يتن مايم على الزرع ونفال من نبلة علو طميه لخير وخي يتن مايم على الزرع ونفال من نبلة علو طميه לכם וכי ימות מן הבהמה אשר היא לכם לאוכלה הנוגע בנבלתה יטמע עד הערב והאוכל מן נבלתה יכבס בגדיו ויטמא עד הערב והנושא את נבלתה יכבס בגדיו ויטמא עד הערב וכל השורס על הארץ שיקס הוא לא יאכל כל הולך על גחון וכל הולך על ארבע עד כל מרבה רגליים לכל השורס על הארץ לא תאכלון כי שקס הם, אל תשקסו את נפשותיכם בכל השורס ולא תטמאו בהם ונטמאתם בם כי אני אדוני אלוהיכם והתקדשתם והייתם קדושים כי קדוש אני ולא תטמאו את נפשותיכם בכל השרס הרומס על הארץ כי אני אדוני המעלה אתכם מארץ מצרים להיות לכם לאלוהים והייתם קדושים כי קדוש אני.
That's interesting. So it says who elevates you from the land of Egypt. But, I mean, while it's technically literally correct, I would translate it more likely as who brings you up from the land of Egypt. But it is interesting how it elevates you, or like who makes you ascend from. I don't know. There's different ways to read it. And Lihiyot Lachem Le'Elohim. From the land of Egypt to Lihiyot Lachem, to be for yourselves. Le'Elohim, for God. Wait, I brought you out to be unto you, Elohim. V'hayitam kadoshim, and you'll be holy. I wonder if it meant, and you'll be kadeshim, and you'll be like holy priests.
אני זאת תורת הבהמה והעוף וכל נפש החיה הרומסת במים ולכל נפש השורסת על הארץ להבדיל בין הטמא ובין הטהור ובין החיה הנאכלת ובין החיה אשר לא תאכל.
Hi everyone, Mark Barden here at Sandy Hook Promise.
Interesting. So I wanted to see if I could find. So what it so we're subscribed to that. I want all notifications for that. But what was the name of it was Torah Rabbit Hole. I want to see if he has anything on this because I want to finish a little bit more art before I go to sleep. Torah Rabbit Hole. Here. Parsha Rabbit Hole, that's what it was.
Hi, I'm Nadav.
See, Shemini.
Hi, I'm David Taub, and welcome.
Let's see.
Hi, I'm David Taub, and
wait, it was wait. Where is it? Oh, wait, here. Oh, that's so weird. I like automatically translated Tazria. Like I thought I saw it say seed somewhere, but no, that's just part of Zerah. Like when you sow, like sowing seeds. Interesting. So we're on. Oh, interesting. I guess he caught up with himself. So Vayikra, Sav, Shmini, Tazria. Wait, is there any others? I think that's all of them. Let's see. Texts, Tanakh, Leviticus, Vayikra, Sav, Shmini, Tazria. Yeah, he's caught up. Cool. So we'll watch this one and then we'll catch up on the others another time when we have more time.
Hi, I'm David Taub, and welcome to the Parsha Rabbit Hole, where I find something weird in the weekly Torah portion and follow it all the way down until it gets even weirder. This week's rabbit hole eventually gets us to a kosher alternative to pork and a wagon pulled by a fish. Fishy, fishy, fishy! But as always, we have to get there. But first, we've got 3 dedications this week. When it rains, it pours, which, by the way, is about salt and not about rain. First, last week's episode should have been dedicated to one of my dedicated listeners, Mendel Wax. So I retroactively dedicate the Sailor episode to you, Mendel. This week's rabbit hole is dedicated by Hilula Status in honor of Reb Elimelech of Lezhensk, author of the Sailor. So I retroactively dedicate the Sailor episode to you, Mendel. This week's rabbit hole is dedicated by Hilula Status in honor of Reb Elimelech of Lezhensk, author of the Sefer Noam Elimelech, and the leader in the dissemination of Hasidus in Poland and Galicia, whose yahrzeit was on the 21st of Adar. By the way, Hilula Status, which sponsored this dedication, is a very cool WhatsApp account that posts the yahrzeits of tzaddikim every day. So the link is in the description, and you can check that out if that's the sort of thing you're into. And finally, this week's rabbit hole is also sponsored by an appreciative fan in honor of number 5. The person who sent this dedication in added rather cryptically, "If you know, you know." Well, appreciative fan, I don't know. I tried to figure it out, and I couldn't. I thought maybe it might have something to do with the Rebbe Rashab, the 5th Rebbe of Chabad. Maybe that's number 5. But his yahrzeit is next week, and his birthday's in the fall, so the dates don't match up. Then I tried to figure out if there's maybe a connection to the 5th episode of the Parsha Rabbit Hole, which was about Groundhog Day. And I thought maybe because spring is starting, it has something to do with that. But the dates don't match up for that either, even if the groundhog didn't see its shadow. So either it's some sort of inside reference that only this person's friends or family is going to get, or I've just been stumped. If any of you guys can figure it out, let me know in the comments. And by the way, I really like the idea of putting puzzles and riddles in the dedications. I think that could be a lot of fun for everybody. If you'd like to dedicate an upcoming rabbit hole or make a small donation to help me keep on digging, go to creativejudaism.com/donate. Okay, let's get started. In this week's Torah portion, Parsha Shemini, besides for more sacrifice stuff, we learn the laws of kosher and non-kosher animals. Among those laws is quite possibly the most universally known thing about Jews, besides for anti-Semitic tropes, which is that we don't eat pigs.
I don't even know what a kosher meal is.
I think it means when a rabbi has inspected it or something.
No, it all has to do with the way they kill the pig.
Come on, but they don't eat pigs.
But there's a fascinating teaching in the Talmud about how God gave us kosher alternatives to everything that's prohibited. Before I tell it to you, I just want to point out that while the vast majority of teachings in the Talmud were said by men, this one was taught by a woman, Yalta, who's mentioned several times in the Talmud as a very learned person. Okay, so this is what it says in the Gemara.
Whoa.
Somehow I don't think this is what it says.
You don't need to build a business to...
Yalta said to her husband, Rav Nachman, that for everything that God prohibited to us, there's something similar which is permitted. The first example she gives is that we're not allowed to consume the blood of an animal, but we are allowed to eat liver, which I guess tastes like blood. I wouldn't know because I've just never really been into brown animal goop in a deli container. It's just not something that's tempted me. Anyways, she gives a whole long list of other examples and then eventually gets to pig. And she says that the kosher version of that is the brain of a fish called shibuta. Now, the whole point of this teaching, by the way, was that she wanted to taste the kosher version of meat and milk. So her husband cooked a cow udder for her. Yum. But as fascinating as the topic of udders in halacha is, that's not why I shared this Gemara with you. The reason why I shared it with you is because it introduces us to the shibuta, a fish whose brain tastes like bacon.
Kosher? Kosher.
Which is cool. But that's just the tip of the Shibuta iceberg. The Shibuta comes up in a bunch of other contexts, and they're all weird. So that's where this week's rabbit hole starts, with the Shibuta. So if you're ready to find out more about this weird fish, let's dive in. Okay, so there are so many cool things to share about this fish that I wasn't even going to bother spending any time on the identity of the fish. Which fish is it?
Hey, what's this one here? What's his name, Bert?
But my wife said that I had to, so I will, but not yet. Because some of the ways in which this fish is mentioned in different places suggest different possibilities for its identity. So once we've heard a bunch of weird stuff about this fish, then I'll do a little roundup about what they suggest about the identity of the fish. Okay, so let's start with another Gemara. There are a lot of mitzvahs that deal with not mixing things. And one of those mitzvahs is that you're not allowed to use two different types of animals working together to perform one task. The Gemara we're about to look at is trying to figure out the parameters of this prohibition. And this is what it says. It asks, if a person drives a wagon with a goat and a Shibuta fish, is that a problem? Now, okay, what does that mean exactly? It's kind of hard to imagine. How exactly does one have a goat and a fish pull a wagon? Fortunately for us, Meiri gives us all the details and paints a very clear picture for us. He says that the wagon is riding along the...
What if it's a goat and a fish as in a goat fish?
Capricorn, yep.
Yeah.
Seashore. The goat is on dry land and the fish is in the water. And they're both attached to the same rope such that the wagon is being pulled by both of them. So that's very cool. Not only does the Shibuta have bacon brains, it's also apparently strong enough to pull a wagon? Okay, next thing. But first, some background. The Gemara mentions in a couple of places a very interesting law of nature, which is that every animal that exists on land has an aquatic version in the sea, with one exception, which is the weasel. So we're going to ignore that very tempting weasel bait because we've got a lot of fish stuff to find, and we got to stay focused. We got to have blinders on like a fish pulling a wagon. So in a different Gemara, it mentions some examples of these sea versions of animals. For example, a sea ox and a sea donkey. But Tosfos adds that there are other sea somethings that aren't mentioned in that Gemara, and the example that they give is the Shibuta, which according to Tosfos is the sea goat. And the proof that they give for that the Shibuta is the sea goat, is our Gemara about the wagon being pulled by the goat and the Shibuta. So this is interesting to me for a couple of reasons. First of all, it suggests that the question in that Gemara might be a lot more complicated than we originally thought. According to this, it could be asking if an animal and its aquatic counterpart are considered the same thing, enough at least, that it wouldn't be a problem to perform labor with both of them together, even though they're different species, which is definitely not the normal way to learn that Gemara, which of course is why I'm drawn to it.
See, whenever an issue requires any real thought, any serious mental effort, people turn to UFOs and sea serpents and Sasquatch.
The next thing that's exciting about the idea of the Shibuta being the goat of the sea is that it creates an interesting animal triangle for me. We already learned that the Shibuta is connected to pigs through brain taste, and now we've got a way that the Shibuta is connected to goats because it's the sea goat. And that pig Shibuta goat triangle does get addressed somewhere, but we'll look at that later on. For now, the most exciting part of this sea goat revelation is that it gets us to another weird fish story in yet another Gemara. Rav Safra said that he was once traveling on a ship, and they saw a certain fish that popped its head up out of the water, and it had horns. And carved on the horns were words that read, "I am a lowly creature of the sea, and I am 300 parsangs long," which, by the way, is about 750 miles long. Okay, and then the engraving continues and reads, "And I am going into the mouth of the Leviathan," which is a giant sea creature, which I'm sure we'll get to in a future rabbit hole.
Good day, Captain.
Then at the end of this little piece, Rav Ashi adds that this is the goat of the sea, which combs the sea and has horns. Okay, so very cool fish story about a 750-mile long fish with horns and a death wish. But if we mash this together with the sea goat thing from Tosfos, we might have a pretty awesome possible description of the Shibuta. And it definitely seems like a 750-mile long sea goat could pull a wagon, but probably straight into the mouth of an even bigger sea monster. Okay, so that last one was a speculative connection that relied on a few moving parts. But now we'll continue with weird stuff that directly mentions the Shibuta. Let's look at another Gemara. The sage Abaye gives a rather cryptic list of things that can cause leprosy. Animal hide, a cup, hot water, eggs, and white lice. The Gemara then explains each of those things, and I'm not going to get into all of them, but for example, hide means somebody who sleeps on raw animal hide that hasn't been processed or cleaned. And hot water means someone who pours boiling hot water on themselves. So most of them make sense to me, at least, as things that might reasonably cause skin infections. But the fish, the Gemara explains, is the Shibuta fish, specifically in the month of Nisan, which is a Hebrew month in the spring. It's coming right up, and that's the month that Pesach is in. So this is a weird little Shibuta fun fact, and honestly, I don't completely understand it. I don't know if it means touching or eating. If you touch the fish in the month of Nisan, then it'll give the person leprosy, or maybe it means only if they eat the fish in the month of Nisan, then it will give them leprosy. I couldn't find any sources that clarified that, but either way, it's weird that that only happens in that particular month of Nisan. If anybody has any ideas why eating or touching this fish in the month of Nisan might be a leprosy hazard, let us know in the comments. Okay, moving on. This next thing isn't the weirdest thing about the Shibuta, but I think it's my favorite. The same exact thing actually shows up in two different places, and maybe kind of three, and we'll see why in a minute. But the two places that it's identical is Midrash Rabbah and Talmud Yerushalmi, the Jerusalem Talmud. It's talking about the first exile of the Jewish people, when the first base of Mikdash, the first temple in Jerusalem, was destroyed, and the Jews went into exile in Babylonia. It says, 700 kinds of kosher fish and 800 kinds of kosher grasshoppers went into exile with the Jews into Babylonia.
We're banished, genius! We're in the human world!
And when the Jews returned to Israel, all of these fish and grasshoppers returned with them, except for one, the Shibuta. So this is interesting to me because it ties the fate of these fish to the fate of the Jewish people, and I think that's cool. But it also means that the Shibuta actually has it worse than the Jews. At least we got to go back for a while. The Shibuta didn't. And I wonder if it will get to come back with us in the time of Mashiach.
And now I will throw the fish into the air. It will sail away, and then it will come back to me.
By the way, if I had said Messianic era instead of the time of Mashiach, it probably would have gotten me some extra clicks, but I have too much integrity to do that. Okay, so you might be wondering why the Shibuta didn't get to come back to the land of Israel with us. I know I was.
Thinking we start cutting carbs, I need to drop my belly fat.
If you want to drop this,
start eating more of these.
Yefem Mara, a commentary on the story parts of the Talmud Yerushalmi, offers one possible answer. He says that it's because their brains taste like pig, and because of that, it isn't fitting for them to be in Israel, which I think is a cool answer. But also, what about actual pigs? There are pigs in Israel, so why are actual pigs allowed to be there, but the kosher fish whose brains only taste like pig aren't? So that's a mystery. But that's not the only answer given for why the Shibuta didn't follow the Jews back to Israel. There's a slightly similar story in the Talmud Bavli, the Babylonian Talmud, which is the one that we're usually talking about. But in the Bavli's version, the fish has a different name. This is what I meant before when I said that there might be a third place that has the same story. So it's almost the same, but you'll see how it's a little bit different. It says that all the animals returned except for the kolyas ha-ispinin. And then it explains that all the fish swam back through underground aquifers. But the kolyas couldn't because its spine isn't strong enough to swim upstream. So based on the fact that pretty much the same exact story is told about the Shibuta in the Talmud Yerushalmi and in Midrash, many commentaries say that the story in the Talmud Bavli about the kolyas ha-ispinin is the same story and that they're the same fish. Which would mean that instead of having to say that the Shibuta is in permanent exile because it has bacon brains, we can say that the Shibuta is in permanent exile because the poor little guys just couldn't make the swim, even though apparently they can pull a wagon.
Well, my weaknesses are actually strengths.
Okay, so now that we have some conflicting physical elements and two different names so far, I think it's time to get into the possible identity of the fish. The most obvious option is the shabut, which is a freshwater carp found in Western Asia and in the rivers of Iran. So that lines up with them being exiled to Babylonia, and of course the name is the same. But Wikipedia doesn't like that name connection and warns us very clearly not to rely on the name similarity and even uses the Talmud against us to stop us from doing so. But that's okay because there are several other options available to us. What about that name, kolyas ha-ispinin? Turns out that coleus is a Greek word, but it also became a Latin word. And that word coleus in Latin is part of the scientific name of the Atlantic chub mackerel. But what about the ispinin part? Coleus ha-ispinin. According to Sefer Ha'aruch, which is a super cool medieval encyclopedia of Talmudic terminology, it refers to Spain, which would make it the Spanish coleus, which at first glance doesn't tell us much. There's no geographic clues that we have that would point to Spain and that would help us figure out what this fish is. But the Arabic word shibuta, which comes from our shibuta in Aramaic, has an etymological descendant in Spanish, which is chaputa, which according to Google can translate to two different fish. One is the pomfret and the other is the goby. Okay, so far we've got a few possibilities. We've got a carp, a mackerel, a pomfret, and a goby. But just to top it all off, Rashi translates coleus ha-ispinin as tuna, which would make a lot of sense because, as we all know, tuna is very famously referred to as the goat of the sea. If all of these possibilities make your head spin, don't worry. The Kaf HaChaim acknowledges the various conflicting physical descriptions of this fish and concluded that there must be multiple types of shibuta, which I think means several completely different species of fish, which all happen to be called by the same name.
3 fish, 4 fish, 5 fish.
So that's one way of dealing with all these random things about this fish that don't seem to fit together. But the 𤤔𝐷𝐿 has a commentary that pulls a lot of these different shibuta pieces together in a way that I thought was really cool. He's explaining the story in Bereshis, where Yaakov goes to intercept the birthright of his brother Esav. So their father Yitzchak asks Esav to go make him some tasty meat. Esav was a hunter, and so Yitzchak asked him to go hunt some meat and bring it to him. Yitzchak's wife and Yaakov and Esav's mother Rivka overhears this conversation, and she tells Yaakov to go get 2 goats and she'll cook them into a tasty dish, and then he'll go instead of his brother Esav. So the question is, why goats? Now, for those of you who aren't familiar with the work of the 𤤔𝐷𝐿, his style is that he presents radical new ideas in the form of a chain of sources with little to no explanation bridging any of it together. So it can be very challenging to understand, and I actually spent a few days trying to figure this one out. So I never translate sources word for word here, but I do usually try to keep it close enough that you can follow along with the on-screen text if you want to. But I'm not even going to try to do that here. I'll put the Hebrew up on screen for a little while for those that want to fact check me, or you can find it in the source sheet if you want. But I'm just going to do my best to explain it in my own words. The 𤤔𝐷𝐿 has a recurring theme in his commentary on this part of Bereshis that Esav has some sort of spiritual and halachic connection to a pig. So what he says here is that Yitzchak was trying to fix Esav. He loved Esav and he wanted him to reach the potential that he could see in him. So to do that, he used that pig shibuta goat triangle that we talked about earlier. Yitzchak wanted to take Esav, who's like a pig, and turn him into a goat, which is kosher. And the reason why that would work, why that would be possible, is because both of them already have a connection via the shibuta, which has a bacon brain, but it's the goat of the sea.
The explanation is simple. It's all connected.
But there's a problem. The shibuta never left the Babylonian exile. It didn't come back to the land of Israel with the Jews. Why? Because it doesn't fit with Geula, freedom. How do we know that? Because it causes leprosy during Nisan, which is the month of Geula, the month of freedom, because that's when Passover is, in which we celebrate our freedom from slavery in Egypt. So Esav can't get pulled over to the good side through the goat meat because the connecting point, the shibuta, is antithetical to freedom. That's how it is in the meat model. But in real life, what does that translate to? Esav has a deep connection with the Jewish people. His descendants and Yaakov's descendants, which is us, have been intertwined throughout history. But then his descendants, the Romans, destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash, the second temple, and created the diaspora that we're in right now, which means that his connection to us, that connecting point, is fundamentally messed up and can't be used as a bridge. Okay, so why is this meaningful to me? Honestly, I don't know. Mainly just because I like how it brings all these random shibuta facts together. But I also thought about this a little bit to see if I could come up with some way to apply it. And here's what I came up with, which is that you can't work with somebody if the only common ground you have between one another is the pain that one of them has caused the other. You've got to find a better starting point than bacon brains. All right, that's it. That's the rabbit hole. As always, if you have any questions or insights or something that I missed, put it in the comments. Thank you for following me down the rabbit hole, which this week I think might have been dug by a sea rabbit.
Interesting. So
Definitely.
what did we... Let's see. This one's quick, so we could just watch this real quick.
Hi, I'm David Taub, and welcome to the Parsha Rabbit Hole, where I find something weird in the weekly Torah portion and follow it all the way down until it gets even weirder. This week's rabbit hole eventually gets to the definition of wicked and a story about an old-timey sea captain.
Captain Carl, did you remember to wash your hands? No!
But, as always, we have to get there. This week's episode is dedicated in honor of the shoes that I did not buy for my children. If you'd like to sponsor an episode of the Parsha Rabbit Hole, go to creativejudaism.com/donate. Okay, let's get started. This week's Torah portion, Parsha Tzav, is all about sacrifices again. And one of those sacrifices is the Korban Toida, or the thanks offering, which is brought by a person who survives a life-threatening experience. And although we're no longer able to offer that sacrifice today because ancient anti-Semites destroyed our temple, there is a counterpart to that sacrifice, a blessing called Birkas HaGoimel, which we are able to say today. So the first thing we're going to start with is the Gemara that lists the types of experiences that would require a person to offer the Korban Toida or to say HaGoimel. This is what it says. 4 people must offer thanks. Seafarers, those who travel in the desert, one who was sick and got better, and one who was imprisoned and then released.
I think we should all be grateful to him.
So there's a lot of technical halakha released.
I think we should all be grateful to him.
So there's a lot of technical halakhic discussion about how broad of a category each one of these things represents and exactly what type of situations require a person to say this bracha. But this is the Parsha Rabbit Hole, and that's not really what we do here. What we do here is we look for the weird and follow it. And that specific list of life-threatening situations, seafarers, desert travelers, sick people, and imprisoned people, seem like an interesting place to start digging. So, if you're ready to see where that leads, let's dive in. Okay, first of all, that list is derived from verses in Kapitel Kuf Zayin of Tehillim, or Psalms 107. But when the Gemara lists those 4 types of experiences, it does it in a different order than they appear in the verses of Tehillim. So that's a question that a lot of commentaries deal with, including the Ben Ish Chai, who answers it in a way that I thought was particularly interesting. He says that the first 2, the sea and the desert travelers, are both situations where a person would be more likely to be grateful afterwards. Both of those cases usually only happen because a person deliberately chose to take that risk, because they wanted something on the other side. For example, a business trip.
I'll need 3 ships and 50 stout men. We'll sail round the Horn and return with spices and silk, the likes of which ye have never seen. We're building a casino. Arr.
But the sick person and the person who is in prison, even after they come out of it okay, they might feel kind of bitter about it and feel like, hey, why should I make a bracha thanking Hashem for this? I'd rather not have to have gone through this at all and not have to make the bracha at all. So therefore, he says, the travelers are mentioned first because it's more natural to want to give thanks, and then the other 2 are listed afterwards because it's less obvious. So the reason why I like this is because I do feel like that sometimes. Thank God not for anything real, but for silly petty stuff. So it was fun for me to see my pettiness acknowledged as human nature, and then be told that I still have to be grateful. Okay, so we'll dig deeper into those 4 types of experiences a little bit later. But when I started digging around for Birkas HaGoimel, I came across something else from the Ben Ish Chai, a tshuva or responsum, in which he offers a parable to someone who asked him some questions. And HaGoimel is mentioned very tangentially there, but the letter was so fun and I couldn't not include it. So someone asked him some questions about Kabbalah, and he says he's unable to answer those questions because he's not an expert in the subject, which, by the way, I think most people would disagree with that assessment. But he says, in lieu of answering the guy's questions, he'll fill this letter with open rebuke. He goes on and mentions that the guy in his original letter to him very proudly informed him that he had learned a certain Kabbalistic text 5 times. And he wanted to know if now he should start gathering students and teaching them this text. And the Ben Ish Chai is very harsh about that. And then he offers this parable. It's very long, so I'm not going to put it on screen, but I'll tell it to you a little bit condensed in my own words. There was once a man who lived in the islands of Portugal, and he was the captain of the king's entire naval fleet. he had a wife and a young son who lived in France, and he hardly saw them. And so he asked the king one day when he got old and he hadn't seen his wife and son for a long time if he could go visit them. So when he was there, he told his wife that when he retires, he wants his son to take over for him. In order to do that, he has to take their son back with him and train him for many years. So then the wife weeps and cries and says that she can't bear to have her son taken away from her, but that she also wants her son to take over as the captain. And so she asks her husband if maybe he could train the boy while he was still there without taking him away from her. And the captain agreed. So he got a bowl full of water and he put the young boy on his lap and he said, "See, my son, this is the great sea." And then he floated an eggshell in the water and got a needle and stuck it in the middle of the eggshell and said, "See, my dear son, this is the ship and then this is the mast." And then he got 3 smaller needles and stuck those in the eggshell and said that those are the other masts, but that the big one is the main mast. And then he peeled off the membrane of the eggshell and tore it into 12 pieces and attached it to the needles and said, "These are the sails that catch the wind and make the ship move." And then he took some hairs and attached them to the needles into pieces and attached it to the needles and said, "These are the sails that catch the wind and peeled that those are the other masts, but that the big one is the main mast." And then he peeled off the membrane of the eggshell and tore it into 12 pieces and attached it to the needles and said, "These are the sails that catch the wind and make the ship move." And then he took some hairs and attached them to the needles and to the egg membrane and said, "These are the ropes that the sailors use to control the sails." Then he took 2 hairs and twisted them together into like a thick hair rope and said, "This is the anchor cable that the ship is tied to at port. And this rope is to sailors what Birkas HaGoimel is to the Jews." I just want to note before I continue that this is the only mention of HaGoimel in this whole story, and that's my entire excuse for including it. Also, I'd like to mention that in the original Hebrew, this whole story rhymes, so I'm not doing that justice at all, but I still think it's worth it to hear the story. Okay, let's continue. So then he takes a piece of wax and he molds it into an anchor and attaches it to the anchor cable hairs. And then he takes some more wax and sculpts little rooms and puts them on the eggshell ship. And then he makes one room and puts it at the front of the ship. And he says, "This is the captain's quarters where you'll live." And then he dropped a spoon in the water and the water splashed the egg ship around and the center needle fell out. And the captain said, "A storm has come and the main mast has broken. So now you have to repair it with spare parts that you keep on the ship." Then he took the spoon out of the water, and the water calmed down, and he said, "Now the storm has passed, my son, and the sailors have gone to sleep." And he hugged and kissed his son goodnight and handed him back to his wife. And then he told her, "Be happy, my noble wife. Your son is now wise and is ready to be called captain." Okay, so the thing that I love about this story is that it's an incredibly detailed and elaborate way to just tell a guy that his level of learning Kabbalah is like a toddler playing boats with eggshells. So that's fun. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this is that the Ben Ish Chai is specifically using the sea as a metaphor for Kabbalistic teachings here. But Torah in general is often compared to water, and the Talmud specifically is compared to the sea in one place. But I had never thought about the possibility of drowning in Torah before. So this whole metaphor made me think about that. I tried digging around to find sources that explored that idea of the possible risks of traveling in the Sea of Torah, but I didn't really find much. If any of you have seen something like that, please share it in the comments. One more thing about the story that was interesting is that I had some trouble translating some of the boat terminology, so I gave it to an AI to translate. And even though I didn't ask for it, the AI also gave me its thoughts on the story. And apparently current AI technology isn't very good at picking up on subtle cynicism, because it said that the captain successfully taught his son how to be a ship's captain, and that the story ends with a message of hope and optimism.
In case you can't tell, I'm being sarcastic.
So the AI didn't get it. Okay, back to HaGoimel. After I was done looking at the commentaries on that Gemara that gave us the list of those 4 types of experiences, and after I got back from my little side excursion to the islands of Portugal, I searched for this phrase, Arba tzrichen lahodos. 4 people need to offer thanks. to see if I could find anything interesting about these 4 experiences in particular and why these are the archetypes that the Torah gives us. And I found a Rashima from the Lubavitcher Rebbe that kind of maps out these 4 things and presents them as creating a kind of geographical map of life-threatening situations. He says that these 4 things represent various divisions between human beings and their environment, and divisions within the environment itself. The sick person is when the threat is coming from within the person themselves. Prison is when the threat is external, from society, the people around them. Then we zoom out even more, and the threat becomes the earth itself, without any people. That's the desert. And then, zooming out even further, beyond dry land, the threat is the ocean.
There's no water in the desert. What was I thinking?
Ocean! The Rebbe there actually offers several different ways to approach these 4 things. And the one that I just shared with you is the first one, and they get increasingly deeper and more mystical from there. But this one, the simplest one, was kind of the most interesting to me because it takes these 4 different things, which seemingly are unconnected other than the fact that they're all life-threatening, and it sets them all up on one continuum, and that was neat to me. Okay, so after I looked around for stuff about these 4 categories, I decided to look at the bracha itself. The language of the blessing is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu melech ha'olam ha'goymu l'chayavim tovos shegamalani tov. Blessed are you, Lord our God, King of the universe, who bestows goodness upon the culpable for having bestowed goodness to me. The language there is interesting. Ha'goymu l'chayavim, who bestows upon the chayavim, which means the culpable or guilty or obligated. But whatever it means, it seems to suggest that this terrible experience that somebody just went through was somehow deserved.
Why me, Lord? Where have I gone wrong? I've always been nice to people. I don't drink or dance or swear. I've even kept kosher just to be on the safe side.
Which is something that kind of rubs me the wrong way and is definitely worth exploring. The Beis Yosef explains this wording in a way that I thought was interesting. He says that this blessing is thanking Hashem for bestowing goodness even on people who are chayav, which I won't even bother translating because he does. He says this means Rashayim, which is usually translated as wicked people. A Rasha is a wicked person. And he adds that the translation of the word Rasha is Chayava. And then he concludes that the intent of the person making this blessing is that I too am one of these Rashayim, these bad people. And even though I don't deserve God's goodness, it has nonetheless been bestowed upon me. Okay, so you might be wondering why I shared this. At first glance, it seems pretty fire and brimstone, which is not what I'm usually into. But there's something interesting going on there that caught my attention. The reason that whole explanation might feel harsh or negative is because in English we translate Russia as a wicked person or an evil person. But the Beis Yosef tells us right there that the translation of Russia is chayava, which means culpable or obligated, which I think takes all the moral judgment out of it. And to me, that's a very Jewish and very different way of looking at that word than what I think we're used to. I actually think that it's probably really difficult for most people to think about that word Russia without any moral judgment, and just think of it as someone who, like all of us, has to deal with the consequences of their actions. Now, whether the consequences of my mistakes warrant being lost at sea is something I'd probably argue against, but I'm still looking around for sources to back that up. All right, that's it. That's the rabbit hole. As always, questions, things I missed, put them in the comments. Thank you for following me down the rabbit hole. I hope it didn't feel life-threatening.
Interesting.
Hi, I'm David Taub, and welcome to the Parsha Rabbit Hole, where I find something weird in the Parsha and follow it down until it gets even weirder. This week's rabbit hole starts with coins and eventually gets us to worms.
Nobody was there. Nobody but worms, that is.
But we have to get there, so let's dive right down that rabbit hole. At the very beginning of this week's Parsha, Hashem blesses Avraham Avinu, Abraham our father, and this is what it says. Ve'escha l'goy-gadol, ve'avarecha, ve'agad l'shmecha, ve'yeh bracha. I will make of you a great nation, and I will bless you, and I will make your name great, and you shall be a blessing. So the part where it says, I will make you a great nation, hey, that's us.
Traitors.
But the Midrash has a different interpretation and adds something interesting. Here's what it says. The Midrash says that Ve'escha l'goy-gadol, I will make you into a great nation, means Yatzaloi Monitin, a coin will be made of you.
Here it is, me lucky dime.
The word moinitin comes from the Latin word moneta, which means money. Now, this phrase, yatzoloi moinitin, also gets used metaphorically in a lot of places to mean that a person will just have a really good reputation and be world-renowned. But in this case, it means it literally. So that means that we're talking about an actual physical Abraham commemorative coin that was minted thousands of years ago. So what did that coin look like? When did it exist? And what other weird stuff can we find out about coins in Torah? So that's where our rabbit hole starts. So I started doing some digging for the coin of Abraham, and here's what I found. There's a section in Gemara, in the Talmud, in Bava Kama, where it's discussing ancient coins, and it's trying to figure out what they looked like. It starts with the coin of Yerushalayim, the coin of Jerusalem, which I assume is the coin that was used in the ancient kingdom of Israel. So this is what the Gemara says. It says that that coin had David and Shlomo on one side, King David and King Solomon, and Yerushalayim Ir HaKodesh, the holy city of Jerusalem, on the other side. Okay, that's pretty cool. We have a description of an ancient coin that was used a really long time ago in ancient Israel. But it's not the coin that we're looking for. Luckily, that's what the Gemara deals with next. It says that the coin of Avraham Avinu had an old man and an old woman on one side, and a young man and a young woman on the other side. Okay, so why is there an old man and an old woman on one side, and a young man and a young lady on the other side? Rashi says that the old man and old woman are Avraham and Sarah, Abraham and Sarah, and the young man and the young woman are Yitzchak and Rivka, Isaac and Rebekah. So now it's not just an Abraham commemorative coin, it's an Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, and Rebekah commemorative coin. Now, one of the obstacles that happens in the rabbit hole a lot is that some of the most interesting, weirdest stuff in the Gemara doesn't have a lot of commentary on it because it's not applicable to Jewish law. But luckily, the Parsha, who lived in the 1500s, has a commentary not just on the legal aspects of the Gemara, but he also has a commentary on all the story stuff. The Parsha says that it makes more sense to say that both sides of the coin are Avram and Sarah, and that it represents the miracle that happened to them, that when they were very old, they had a son and returned to their youth. So one side of the coin is Avram and Sarah being old, and the other represents the miracle that happened to them, that it was like they were young again. Okay, so that's still the same pictures on each side, it's just a different interpretation of what they mean. But, according to Tosfos, the coin looked completely different. They raise an objection to the idea of having pictures on the coin, because Jews aren't allowed to make raised images of human beings.
Thou shalt not make unto thee any graven image.
So they say that the coin didn't have a picture of two people on one side and two people on the other side. It had the words old man and old woman on one side and young man and young woman on the other side. And they point out that Rashi actually says this about the coin of Yerushalayim, the Jerusalem coin. Over there by that coin, Rashi says that the words are written on that coin. But Rashi doesn't say that about the Abraham commemorative coin. But Tosfos does. So now we got two versions of what this coin looked like. Either it had a picture of an old man and an old woman on one side and a picture of a young man and a young woman on the other side, or it had the words old man, old woman on one side, and young man and young woman on the other side. According to the Rogatchover Gaon, this actually reveals a significant legal dispute between Rashi and Tosfos. He says that what this comes down to is an argument about whether a non-Jew can make an image like that for a Jew. So even though a Jewish person isn't allowed to make these images, a non-Jewish person is allowed to, but are they allowed to make it for a Jewish person? So according to Rashi, who says that the Abraham commemorative coin actually had pictures on it, yes. And according to Tosfos, who says no, it had to be words, then no. So why am I telling you about this seemingly very boring legal debate? It doesn't seem all that rabbit hole. Well, first of all, it does answer one of our original questions. When did this coin exist? It was made by non-Jews, which I think means that we're talking about a very, very ancient coin that was minted in the times of Avraham Avinu, which would be pretty cool because it would make it thousands of years older than the oldest coin that we have evidence of. But the other reason why I told you about this is because I needed to introduce this question of whether non-Jews can make a raised image on a coin for a Jew to get us to the worms.
We'll open up your eyes.
So after I found a sufficient description of the Abraham commemorative coin, the next thing I wanted to do was dig deeper into that phrase, Yatsamoinitin, a coin was issued. So I typed that phrase into the search box, and one of the first things that caught my attention was a tshuva, responsa, from Rabbi Yaakov Emden. And you know I love tshuvas. So in this tshuva, Rabbi Yaakov Emden isn't answering a question that was sent to him, but is answering his own question. He said that he saw a coin that had an image of a rabbi on it, a very holy rabbi, Rabbi Elazar of Brod. He said he was very bothered by this, and he wondered if the rabbi himself had known about the coin, or if he had even commissioned it. And the reason why he was so bothered is because he says that would be completely forbidden.
I show you a god of gold.
And he goes on for quite some length and brings a bajillion different proofs for why you cannot make a coin like this, or even have somebody else make it for you. Now, this is what rabbit holes are made of. So I Googled Rabbi Elazar Brod coin, and nothing came up, because there is no Elazar of Brod. But eventually, with determination, I got to the Wikipedia entry on the history of the Jews in Brody. And among its list of famous rabbis who came from there, it lists Rabbi Elazar of Amsterdam, who was born in Krakow. Later on, as an adult, he became the rabbi of Brody, and then eventually became the rabbi of Amsterdam, and was more commonly known as Rabbi Elazar of Amsterdam. And it mentioned the coin. I said Amsterdam a lot, didn't I?
Maury Amsterdam.
So now with that new information, I Googled again, and I found two very interesting things. First, I found pictures of the coin, and not only that, apparently you can buy it for $15,000 on eBay. If anybody watching this video wants to buy that coin and gift it to me, I would be very appreciative. The second very interesting thing I found, though, was that there's two versions of the story of why this coin was created. The first one is, fine. They created the coin just because he was a very illustrious rabbi and he came to their city, and so to honor him, they created this coin for him. The second version, though, is that he cured a plague of worms, and the entire nation was so grateful to him that the king had this coin commissioned for him. So I did some digging, and I found that apparently there was actually a major shipworm infestation in Holland in the 1730s. Shipworms are actually not worms, they're clams, but they don't look like clams, they look like worms with two little shells on the top of their head. And they burrow their way into wood and make tons of tiny little holes and destroy docks and harbors and ships. If you've ever seen a pirate movie with an old decrepit pirate ship with tons of holes in the wood, that's shipworms. And apparently for an economy based on trading through wooden ships, this can be devastating. So this is lining up, but it was very hard to find the story about the worms. I kept on digging and digging and digging, and eventually I found the story in a book about the history of the leadership of the Belzer Hasidim, because they are descended from Elazar of Amsterdam. So this is the story as it was told by the fourth Rebbe of the Belzer Hasidim. When Rabbi Elazar came to Amsterdam, there was a terrible worm infestation going on. The scientists were baffled, people were terrified, and apparently it threatened the existence of the entire country. So the king heard about this very holy rabbi who had come to town. And after a lot of persuasion, eventually Rabbi Elazar realized he had no choice and agreed to pray on behalf of the country. So he went out into a field and he started davening. He poured out his heart to his creator. And by the end of his tefillah, by the end of his prayer, the worms started coming out of the ground and they all slithered their way into the ocean and died. And the country was so grateful that the king had this coin commissioned, which you can buy for $15,000 on eBay. So I think this is pretty cool.
St. Patrick.
Right? Like, that literally sounds like Jewish St. Patrick in Amsterdam. I'm going to have to look more into that story.
The rabbit hole started off with the Abraham commemorative coin and eventually got us to a story about a rabbi solving a devastating worm epidemic through the power of prayer, taking us full circle back to another commemorative coin. Now, I don't know if the worm epidemic that Rabbi Elazar solved was the shipworm epidemic, but if it was, it would be a pretty big deal. See, the shipworm epidemic was actually one in a string of natural disasters that happened in the region at that time. And when lots of bad stuff happens, people get scared. And when the masses get scared enough, they can start looking for a scapegoat. And that's exactly what happened. The Christian religious authorities in Holland at that time started witch hunting and massacring people whose behavior they deemed to be sinful. Now, I don't know if the worms that Elazar of Amsterdam got rid of were the shipworms, but if they were, and he had any part in stopping these horrible things that were happening to people, that would be super cool. And that leads us to one final thing that I found as I was searching for the word matbea, the Hebrew word for coin. The Mishnah tells us that when witnesses come to testify in a capital case, a case where somebody's life is on the line, there's a whole script that the court is supposed to say to these witnesses to make them understand how serious this is. There's a lot in there, but one of the things that they're supposed to mention is that Adam Harishon, Adam, the first man, was created alone. As we know, the Torah tells us at the very beginning that Hashem created Adam, and Adam was all alone. And so then afterwards, Hashem created Chava, Eve. Great, very interesting creation trivia, but why is that relevant to tell witnesses in a capital case? The Mishnah uses the analogy of a coin to explain. When human beings make coins, they make a mold, and then they make all the coins from that mold, and all the coins are identical. But Hashem created all human beings from the same mold, from Adam Harishon, Adam, the first human being, And yet every single one of us is unique and different. So it is precisely because every single human being is different that makes us each an invaluable, one-of-a-kind, limited edition commemorative coin.
Isn't it lovely?
And then the Mishnah ends, therefore, every single person is obligated to say, Bishvili nivra ha'olam. The entire world was created just for me. All right, that's the rabbit hole. If there are any history buffs or coin collectors out there who can add some interesting tidbits to this, please do that in the comments. And as always, if you have any other interesting information or questions that can send me down another rabbit hole, comment away. All right, thank you for following me down the rabbit hole. On your way out, feel free to browse our gift shop where you can find a $15,000 rabbit hole commemorative coin.
Interesting.
Hi, I'm David Taub, and welcome to the Parsha Rabbit Hole, where I find something weird in the weekly Torah report.
That's probably where we'll head off. So, any thoughts on that? I mean, that's really interesting.
Yeah, nothing particular. Definitely interesting. Worth looking into.
But yeah, it almost seems like, I mean, this idea of the coins. Sorry, I'm multitasking also. But what was it with the coins and this tradition that apparently Abraham was on a coin? What does that kind of sound like to you?
Well, you got Abraham the king. You got, it's an anachronism since, coins of that type weren't done until, about the 700s with Lydia.
Yeah, but what was used?
Well, just basically weight ingots.
Well, no, I mean, what else would have the picture of someone?
Well, your graven images.
Well, no, but I mean, like, you don't even have to go that abstract. Like the seal of a king.
Okay.
That's something that goes back even to ancient Egypt.
Okay.
Like I think that's something that, I mean,
well, the seals go back further than Egypt. I mean, Mesopotamia had it.
Oh yeah. And that's kind of my point. That maybe it's like maybe it was the seal of a ancient Near Eastern king who they associated with Abraham.
No, interesting. I was going to say the other thing that popped into my mind was the Hasmoneans did coins with their images on it too.
Oh yeah. Though wasn't that kind of like a Hellenistic thing?
Yeah. That's what jumped in my mind when you're talking about coins with a Jewish person on it. That the Hasmoneans jumped to mind.
Oh yeah, I see what you mean. Interesting. Sorry, I'm just also like multitasking, but the one thing that I do think is kind of interesting is that like you have, with what we were talking about before with the heifer. So you have the heifer, and then but what we're talking about right now is actually it's just the the Egel Ben Bakar, the calf that's the son of the cow but not the heifer, not son of the heifer, which is interesting. But also even the existence of the Ben Parah implies that it's someone who's born of a or that's a calf that's born of a cow that has never given birth before.
Interesting.
And that really has echoes with some of the at least Christian ideas around Messiah. Let's But yeah, do you have any ideas where that idea of, I mean, like, I guess the Holy Virgin motif, I mean, you definitely have it in other traditions, but have you tracked that at all?
No, I haven't tracked that much. I mean, the one thing that jumps into mind immediately is the Gnostic with Yaldabaoth being a, basically the Immaculate Conception from Sophia.
Interesting. Oh yeah, because that's literally Immaculate Conception.
Yeah.
Interesting. And but the other thing that I think is really worth noting is the fact that you have the list of all of these animals, and some of them have really interesting names. I wish I had more time to go into them, but there's always a future. And then let's see, what else was there? Sorry, one moment. There's definitely something I'm forgetting. Oh, right. The strange fire. I really feel like that's another thing to really look into, but obviously didn't have as much time as would have liked. Let's see.
Definitely.
Let's see. Sorry, I'm just trying to finish drawing this last bit. Okay, perfect. There. And then we just have to read off. Okay, here. So where did it go? Here. Here. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher natan lanu torat emet v'chayei olam nata v'tochenu baruch atah Adonai noten haTorah. Okay. On that note, we'll close off. Any last words? Or not last words, but any last thoughts?
Nope, it was fun as always.
Yep.
Want to tell the Rebbe the words of the new song that we're singing with Mashiach, right? So I'm just going to read him. Am Yisrael, have no fear. Mashiach will be here this year. We want Mashiach now. We don't want to wait. Okay? Mashiach now, we want Mashiach now. Oh yeah, Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be this year. Am Yisrael, have no fear, Mashiach will be here this year.